We're gonna call the meeting to order
Yes.
at 8:30. We're looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second. Any discussion on the agenda?
We're gonna change the agenda?
Yeah. We'd like to move number 8. It's receipt and information, consideration of 2022 comprehensive trail network plan, projects and budget. And it's a fairly long receipt of information. We're going into contract negotiations with the deputies right after public comment and a couple other items. So we're gonna move number 8 in front of number 12, actually combine it with number 12. 12 is discussion and possible action on the comprehensive trail network. Anyone have anything else on the agenda? All's in favor?
Aye.
How about the minutes of our September 9th meeting? Like to approve them? To approve.
Second.
Discussion on the minute? Good, Mike.
There was a reference to capital budget. And
Find on there, Mike.
discussing them. I recollect.
Something you'd like to see changed on the minutes?
Yeah. Talking about
Idea what he's looking for?
If he's looking on, capital improvement plan was incorporated in the annual budget review. Is that what you're referring
yeah,
to?
I think it is.
Okay, and I think
Did you find that?
that is referring to the fact that today when we go over the budget, capital improvement plan is incorporated in that for your review.
Right.
It would be on the second page of the minutes in the middle of the page.
Is there anything you feel is incorrect in the minutes?
Nothing I see incorrect.
Can you find that? I was looking at the middle of the page.
Here, you want to hand that to me? You found it? No.
Right here, if that's what you're looking for.
One more.
What you're looking for, Mike, right here. Did you read it, Mike, that something we were supposed to review, wasn't distributed?
It didn't, I remember reading the question. I'd like to have a discussion about the capital budget, and that it wasn't sent out, it we're going to do, usually it's several years.
Yeah,
I don't, the way this is written, I think it could be stricken, but I don't think it was included, at least as far as any discussion we had. I would move to strike that one.
the straight capital improvement plan
Plan
was incorporated in the annual budget review.
I don't think it was.
I think that could be stricken, and because we're going to review it today, it's within.
And then it'll be in the next month's minute.
Yeah.
All right, is there a second?
Sure, I'll second.
Any further discussion on striking that sentence? Not all in favor? Aye. Anything else on the minutes? Not all in favor of the original motion? Aye. Agreed. Anyone has any conflict of interest on any item as we go through? Just let us know when that item comes up. Public comments, all 3 minutes a person, not to exceed 30 minutes total. Are there any public comments? Just come up to the podium and name and your problem.
My name is Lori Lanston. I'm from Amory. I grew up in Polk County on a farm north of McKinley. So I know all about recycling. Grew up in a farm, you recycled everything. Never threw anything away. You grew up in town. You had to return your milk bottles to get more milk the next week. I would like Board of Supervisors to strongly consider revamping the recycling center. This was for the citizens of Polk County. We received $8.9 million from the stimulus money. I understand you're selling the sand pit for another $1 million. So it is in our best interest, in your best interest, to revamp the center, get it going, get it improved, put some programs in place to educate the citizens of Polk County, because that's what's really important. Very sad thing happened. Eau Claire had to close half of their wells because of the contamination from things that people threw away. I don't want that to happen up here. Mostly everybody up here is private wells because of the rural area. So we strongly recommend keeping the recycling center open. You have the ability to do it. And we think that expanding the program would even be better. I know for a fact that Amory itself needs 2 or 3 more of those big bins to keep up with the recycling since we lost our recycler. So we need to save this county. We need to save this city. We want to be a beacon to say, oh, you know, Polk County's got a great recycling program. Let's get with them and find out what they did. And the Women's Club does programs for the schools. We do Clear Lake, we do Amory. We want to expand to more of the schools. Kids know how to recycle. It's the parents and the adults that don't know how to recycle. So I urge you to please consider keeping the center open, revamping it, improving it, developing programs to go further. Last thing is the Amory Women's Club. We're part of the General Federation of Women's Club of Wisconsin and also the international organization. We're going to send this resolution to our state. And it says, whereas the Amory Women's Club, a member of the General Federation of Women's Clubs of Wisconsin, recognizes the needs to promote and encourage participation in conservation, education, and programs. Whereas this includes recycling, repurposing, reusing, reimagining, and rethinking. Included also are renewable and non-renewable natural resources. The Amory Women's Club urges all local, state, and national governments to aid in the preservation of the environment. Resolved for the GFWC Wisconsin to recognize the importance and adoption of this mandate. So we're going to be sending that in along with supporting evidence to hopefully have the state put this in our resolutions concerning the environment. And as you know, the committee, or the, I should say, the world leadership are coming together for their environmental conference. So I strongly urge that you do this. It's for us. It's for your kids. This is who this is for. It's for your kids. So they can actually breathe fresh air, drink good water. So anyway, that's all I have. Do you have any questions, anyone?
Thank you.
Yep.
We allowed a little bit more than 3 minutes. I didn't want to cut you off right in the middle of your
Thank you.
program. So, is there any more public comments? Anyone online with public comments? Out there?
No, sir.
All right, we're gonna close public comment. Are there any supervisors not seated as committee members here today that would have any information for this committee? Say not. Are there any announcements? Committee information need to receive? All right, we're gonna go into a closed session, contract negotiations with, PPA. Going in under statute 19.851E. Someone wanna? I. Gotta get some doors open. Got it, we're going.
We are. We're live.
All right. Back in open session. We have a discussion and update regarding the planning and funding county board priorities. Broadband, parks and trails.
Where are we?
And
Oh,
planning and funding.
yeah, my own, I guess, on our work plan, the two priorities in general government, broadband, parks and trails. Broadband, as I've mentioned now, about a month ago, we hired a consultant, very inexpensive process, but he is doing a survey now with internet service providers who have rights or opportunity to do fiber optic cable in the county. And in fact, Sharon Kelly mentioned in yesterday's Health and Human Services, how the big issue brought up at the WCA is that we don't know where fiber optic cable or high-speed internet cable is located in a county. They keep showing us these maps. Polk County looks like it's one of the best counties in the state. What happens is if one location has high-speed internet or fiber optic cable, the whole census tract gets listed as there, it's present, everybody's got it. We all know that's not true. What we're paying our consultant is he's doing a map to the road level of where people have access to cable or high-speed internet and what the cost is. Because if it's too expensive for the average person to buy it in this county, they don't have access to it. So we're getting all that information. We'll put it on a map here within about a month, and then we will be able to identify priorities to target and go to internet service providers to say, are you interested in working on this area and maybe teaming up? So it's an option where we can provide incentives either to citizens to work with a company or whatever. So that's kind of where we're going with that. I think initially, if you recall, people thought, boy, the feds are going to give a lot of money. We don't need any more money for broadband. The fact of the matter is, most of those things got pulled out of the federal legislation. We still continue to do well on grants for our internet service providers. We are getting expanded in some places, but I think this is going to kickstart and give us leverage with internet service providers to say this is an area. And it won't just be fiber optic. Most of it will, but we will have, kind of the microwave or the airways internet service where we cannot get cable. We will actually be able to say we're going to target a tower in these areas or a company. So we're making progress with that, and hopefully by next month we'll have the results of that map. Parks and Trails, I'll just say we've got that stuff coming up here later today. PTAG has made great progress. You all will be taking a look at priorities, and from there, that's when we can start the implementation process. That's all I got.
Comments, questions?
When would is that report, is there a deadline on that, or have they got
Of the broadband mapping,
broadband?
it was anticipated to be about 6 or 7 weeks, so I'm guessing it'll be within the next month.
All right. Discussion and possible action regarding recycling center.
That is a resolution. Mo's not here. In essence, I think.
Oh, he wanted me to text him when we were done,
Oh,
so.
yeah, basically this is, can I say it's a formality where they've asked to have not a name, but a rather this Mo's, his title on the resolution, not his name or what was it?
Right, so it doesn't tie it to a particular person holding the
Right.
position, but the position itself.
So that's just a matter. I mean, it's something that, I would think if you agree and approve to.
Make a motion to approve that resolution.
Second. Need any more discussion on it? Not all is in favor?
Aye.
How about the approval of recycling ordinance rewrite?
That's what Mo was going to be here to go
Yeah.
over.
And I did just text him. He said he would come back over. I forgot when we were just done, so that's my, we're not texting him on.
Let's, check something else. How about discussion and possible action of the comprehensive trail network plan?
Still got
We're gonna get a,
Excuse me, Chair, you still got 5421.
yeah, but aren't we gonna, that doesn't tie to the ordinance, right, or recycling?
No. I do have a point of order on that resolution. I'd like to have the Chair and Corporation Council.
All right, resolution 5421.
So I see this is the one, Fran, you drafted this, right? Find it.
It's movie review.
And the leader reviewed it. So Chair, and I've had a couple calls, public and from county board supervisors. A number of us got phone calls based off a letter that Supervisor Duncanson puts in paper. And question is the walking quorum violation? Because supervisor in a letter to the editor laid out basically what she wanted in a resolution and told people to call us to lobby us for support of that resolution before we vote on it. So my concern is when a supervisor does that, not just, talk about, hey, I think we should improve the recycling center, to actually ask someone to contact me, or her, to tell me to support the resolution and vote for it. Is there a concern of a walking quorum? And I'd hate for us to get in any litigation, or if we're gonna pass this and we're gonna move it to the county board, what's the next line of phone calls that are gonna come because of that action? That's my point of order. Is
Have a response?
So the way I understand your question, you're saying when a supervisor expresses an opinion out in a public forum, like a letter to the editor or a blog post, because I know we had issues many, many years ago with a previous county board member who maintained a blog. And he would advocate, and advocating for positions is great. But once you step over and say, now other people need to contact the other elected officials, really, that was the issue then. So I would see it as the same now. If it were any type of communication outside of the current county board
the
meeting.
letter specifically, I believe, and I don't have a letter in front of me, but specifically said, contact your supervisors.
Sure. So expressing an opinion or advocating that people contact them to learn more about it, that's all fine. But anything that steps over and says advocate for, contact the other elected officials and advocate for this position, that was the walking quorum issue with the blog. I see it the same with.
They could contact whether they were for it or against it, either side. The statement was to contact your supervisor.
But it had a dollar, it talked about how much money, it talked about, because I had a town board person actually call me too and said, we want you to spend the money that's being proposed for this, based on the article. And I just felt like, that's what I'm concerned.
Sure.
That's very concerning to me when a supervisor writes a letter to everybody to say,
Yeah, because you wouldn't want a supervisor writing an open letter saying to all the other supervisors, because that's outside of a meeting. In the same way, you can't have somebody else make contact on your behalf. So advocating for a position and then saying contact the others to advocate for that same position, that could be a walking quorum issue.
that's what I was concerned, and that's what's got brought up to me, is that we have to be very careful when we do this. Then to say, hey, please, like they came in today and said, hey, please support the recycling center. It's important to us. For a supervisor to say, please, support recycling center in Polk County, we want support. I don't have a problem with that.
Right. So, now is when the last time this issue arose with the blog posts, blogs were kind of a new thing. And now if you think about like Facebook, it would be inappropriate for an elected official, a county board supervisor, to say in a Facebook post, contact all of the other supervisors and advocate. And so I don't see there's a difference, just the circulation basis.
So what do we do about it if there is a violation of a walking quorum?
Well, as long as nobody, sends it to the DA or the attorney general, you should just avoid it in the future.
So now we're gonna vote on something, the same thing. Could that happen? Could someone challenge it?
I don't think they would be able to challenge at this point an ultimate vote, especially if it got to the full county board, unless they were able to prove that supervisors then voted along with it directly because of that communication. So, at this point, I'm not concerned about the invalidation of a vote on this issue going forward, but there could be a person who instigated it having the forfeiture issue, more so than the issue of undoing the county board ultimate action or decision on it.
If there's any real concern about this, would suggest that we ask for opinion from council. Heading of open meeting law.
I think they already have a lot of articles about walking
I would like
forums
to
and
see an opinion
examples.
from them that said that this in some way or other violated an open meeting.
Chair, I'm fine with our corporation. Chair, I'd like to point out, I'm fine with my
I
question.
was at the floor, I think,
And I heard your question, Chair. It was my question, and my question was directed to we have legal counsel. We don't have to go outside the
I
county.
think I had the floor when you interrupted
Go ahead.
Supervisor Nelson.
Go ahead, Supervisor Pritchard. Have the floor.
I think I've spoken what I said, but I think.
Yeah, I just wanted to tell you, I didn't think we
Yeah,
needed
the
that.
lawyerette,
But we're going to
Lawyer
put that sort
opinion
of
is-
limit
Yeah.
on writing letters
subpar,
to the
it's fine.
Yeah.
editor.
And
So, wasn't very long ago, we had another supervisor. About the
Sure.
And I guess I don't see the distinction between those two letters. And also, my next question would be, why didn't Corporation Council raise that issue with me when I submitted the resolution to for review? And at the time I wrote the letter to the paper, I hadn't written that.
Right. I just heard about it in the last week or two, about a week or so.
So I guess that, I would like to think that, of course, part of everyone's job is to keep everybody else from getting in trouble. So I guess I'm wondering why that issue wasn't raised to me before.
So you're asking why I personally didn't raise it, so now I should read every single letter to the editor that's written by a county board supervisor to determine whether there's an issue in all of the newspapers? I mean, that's just not something I do.
I mean, you could do it on Facebook. You'd have to look at every one of our whoever Facebooks. You'd have to look at everything. Got that much time with that?
I guess I'm gonna go right back. I don't understand why we've got a resolution on the floor that is going against something that the county has already decided to do in the process. We had decided on a process to go utilizing ARPA funds, and now we got a resolution that's going outside of that
You all
process.
wanted that resolution last month when I was here. You wanted me to bring it to the committee today. That's why I did so. It's because all of you asked where it was and you wanted to see it. And you asked me to bring it to the committee this month.
I think
so
what was
that's
said
why-
is that if it was gonna be brought forward, it would have to be in the form of a resolution. But we decided prior to that we're gonna go through this process for utilizing ARPA funds.
One of the things I think then, what I hear what you're saying, because we've got this sort of, here's the categories and format for how we're going to vet concepts and ideas, and this would probably go into
Right.
the infrastructure one or something like that. So then this committee could refer it to that process. It just happens to already be written.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't,
And I addressed Supervisor Duncanson. I did say, hey, if you want that resolution, you got two ways to do it. But it's not my job as the chair we had a supervisor a year ago wanted to write a resolution for grass cutting on lakes, right? And it's not my job to say, hey, I'm not gonna tell him, hey, that's a dumb resolution. I just says, well, it's your choice if you want to write it. So I'm not gonna get into why supervisors want to submit resolutions or the timing, if they're not asking my opinion. All I was telling you, Fran, is that the proper channels, if you want to write a resolution, you think it's the right time and it's the right wording, it's your resolution. I have no problem you doing whatever you want to do. Any supervisor has the right for that. So that was my context of why I said, well, you either can write a resolution or last month we agreed, like you said, on the ARPA. I mean, it can go either way. And that's what the board has to discuss. So,
The staff also recommended me to bring it to this.
yeah, once you do a resolution, I don't care what the resolution is. I wrote resolutions, they recommend you take it to Health and Human Services. I wrote resolutions, I've taken Environmental Services. Not every resolution I've ever sponsored came here. So they always tell you, you got to take it to a committee first. And your resolution is going to go to the county board. The only way it doesn't go to the county board is whether the author of the resolution wants to table it. But your resolution, whatever happens here today, is going to go to the county board agenda. It's on the agenda unless you want to decide to pull it. I don't think we can stop it, no matter what the issues are at this point,
just whether it goes with or without a recommendation.
right?
Sure.
They got
My distinct recollection that Supervisor Duncanson had brought a written resolution to the board at our last meeting. mentioned in the minutes here, and it says it was with motion withdrawn. It was coupled with a very specific recommendation to Supervisor Duncanson that bring it back to the open meeting, that she review it with him alone. Not the agenda packet, so I don't think anyone's being.
So Chair, I'd like to discuss Mr. Pritchard's comments. Yeah, there was discussion of a resolution, but there was never a discussion about maybe there's some walking quorum issues with the resolution. And no one I never knew in the resolution we were going to be asking for ARPA funds, which goes to Supervisor Ruck. So yeah, anyone can say they have a resolution, but until you see the draft language of it, Mr. Pritchard, you don't know what it's going to say.
I think the
Because there was-
resolution last month had the ARPA reference.
Was a question about whether a resolution
Agenda.
could mandate that something be included in the administrator's budget. I think so. It was, could there be a pre-budget resolution? And I said the only way
Right.
that would work would be ARPA, but nothing stops somebody from
Right.
trying to amend the budget in November.
Can you correct the record, right? Mr. Pritchard, I believe, is mischaracterizing what happened last month. There was no resolution on the agenda last month. There was a discussion on where to bring it. That's what was discussed. We didn't see a resolution on our agenda last month, did we? Because they were still writing it. Can you correct the record for Mr. Pritchard, Supervisor Duncanson, that there was not a resolution last month?
The resolution wasn't on the agenda.
There you go.
That's why actually I was kind of surprised when some of the members said they wanted to see it right now. You got it, let's see it right now. I'm like, it's not on the agenda.
Yeah, well, you got it. Now you get your feedback. That's how it works.
All right, we need probably a motion to bring resolution 5421 to the floor. For discussion on it.
This is another one of the issues that's come before this board, this committee on the recycling center. What we do about it. We've had a study, we've had discussions on several agendas going back several months. It's one of those that I would put in the category where I think there's been more constituents feedback on the recycling center than I've heard perhaps on any other except for CAFOs and the Stellar Seven Lakes Trail, possibly, although I put it in the same category. And I've heard many people, both in my district and some people from outside, urging that the recycling center be, as we heard this morning, be upgraded and continued, and that we have a vigorous recycling program within the county. I think this is a basic element of our government. Do this, try and keep our planet reasonably clean, and all the issues that come up in that context. And I feel very strongly about this, that it's something that we should do. We've heard the talk about the ARPA funds, and these basically are probably not recurring costs with the recycling center, but it's a one-time thing to get it up and going, and the efficiencies, I presume, down the line. And the other thing that concerns me very, very much is that the trash haulers have opted not to haul recyclables to the recycling center. I would go a step further and think that we should have the ordinance that tells trash haulers, if they are hauling trash, pick up recyclable materials and haul them to our recycling center. I'd like to see that be pursued, but I feel very sure we should, and I don't put this outside of the pure bottom line, black or red ink of the recycling center is we've heard the black ink or red ink depends largely on the market for the recycled material. Anyway, I think it'd be bottom line a good investment for us to do the necessary to get the recycling center going the way we'd like to see it.
Something I just want to clarify, motion was to bring it to the floor, was that with or without a recommendation?
So you're changing the motion to say you're bringing it.
Well, you said to bring it to the floor, but it was your intent when I seconded the motion was to bring it to the
You
floor
can
for
bring it
discussion.
either way you want. Like change the motion.
It may be two separate motions.
It's gonna go to the county board.
Yeah, it's going to
It's
the
gonna go to
county
the-
board.
For the board anyway.
Whether we
so
vote it up or down in a committee,
Yeah.
it'll go, it's gonna go to the county board no matter what.
Just asking about the procedural. point
Yeah.
of that.
And Chair, I'd just like to comment too. I think my point on this and a little bit as the chair, understanding a little bit broader county stuff we're working on. I totally support the recycling program. I want to make it very clear that I think everyone in the county wants, I haven't heard one county supervisor say, we don't think the recycling program should be made better, that communities should be recycling. We should increase recycling in Polk County. I'm 100% behind it. But to start, we got in a little trouble with the fair when we did this, where we passed a resolution for some rainy day. There's no dollar amount on here. We're putting funds to it, what the funds we're already working on, to that other, what Supervisor Ruck brought up. We don't have $8 million of funds. We were told last month we have $4 million of funds with ARPA. To jump in front of everybody else's projects to say we're going to use ARPA funds. I think this resolution could have been structured a little bit different because the county's still in negotiations with outside agencies looking at our recycling program. We are currently still working on an ordinance that would address Supervisor Pritchard's things. I'm 100% behind Mike on this. Every community should be required, if they got a trash hauler, to recycle. So there's a lot of agreement on recycling, but to start saying we're going to designate funds and jump in front of everyone else on the list, that I am concerned about the timing and the funds. So I just wanted to make that comment.
And you got anything? No more. All right, we're gonna put it to a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion fails, but the resolution still goes forward. All right, how about, I think we got two things on the,
To be accurate, Chair, I want to come back. So the motion's going to go with no recommendation. Because we didn't have a vote to send it with a recommendation. Is that correct? Or
the motion failed in committee.
send it with a recommendation? Is that what you were asking for, Fran? I just want to make sure that that we write the minutes correctly and it goes to the board.
Without a recommendation. Just
Right.
like last month.
Is that how your motion was? Yeah.
Without a recommendation.
Okay.
I think we may have got two spots here on the comprehensive trail network plan project.
You want to,
Mo's here.
Lois here, we can talk about the rewrite of the
What, we skipped something?
B.
Oh.
B.
All right, approval of recycling ordinance rewrite.
There, last month we went, asked for any more comments on the ordinance. Back then with everything, took everything out, all the markups off, This is the final draft of the ordinance. Looking for approval. It is on there. Clarification, our ordinance does mandate that every community must have recycling and offer recycling to its residents. Also, the haulers, our private haulers, waste management, watermen's disposal, Olson sanitation, and Holt disposal are hauling product to the recycling center. Just clarification, back to the ordinance is what we're looking for is just your approval to approve the ordinance as it was rewrote, basically.
So move.
Second.
Further discussion on the rewrite?
Are the changes to the current ordinance marked in this document?
That was on the ones you received the last meetings. I removed all the markup off on this one. That's the clean copy.
And then I didn't understand on the comment that they are picking up recyclables.
They are delivering to the recycling center, those private companies.
But they're not picking up in, for example, St. Croix Falls and Emory, as far as I'm.
No, that those communities, and it's up to the community to find a way to provide recycling for those things, whether it be county drop boxes or another hauler.
My suggestion was that the county would actually have some way of getting that, making that happen.
It is in our ordinance that they must require recycling. And
But
provide
we're not
recycling.
we're not enforcing that.
Enforcement is a whole nother issue.
You mean curbside, Mike? Do they have to do curbside?
I'd say in the municipalities, probably, at least where there are contracting trash haulers that are picking up trash, that they have to also pick up recycling.
There'd be finance incentives to that for those individuals. That's a private industry that's against the village municipal policy.
With the city of
You
St.
can't just say to Waterman Sanitation that now, we're not gonna pay you for it, but you gotta haul the recyclables.
And they're contracted, they'll do it.
But it's not in the contract that it's curbside.
All right, all right.
Anyhow,
Everybody, rein it in. One question at a time, get the floor, we're not having private conversations here, we're addressing the body. What do you want? You got something, Mike? You got a motion? You have to have something?
I would like to see
Make a motion. Make a motion, take some action, otherwise we're moving on. You want something changed in the ordinance?
I'll move we table this until we have a chance to further discuss the question of actually making
All right.
recycling happen in county.
You got the motion?
We already got a motion.
Motion to table until we have a chance to discuss.
We got it.
Pick up
You're gonna need a second.
recyclable trash.
I would say postpone to a date certain. Clean. Table is just moving it later in the meeting if you take it from the table.
Until our next regular general government.
I, for lack of a second here. Discussion on the motion? Not, all in favor? Opposed? Aye. All right. Unless someone wants to change something on this, our job is approval of the recycling ordinance rewrite. Not something changed, change it. We take a motion to accept the rewrite.
We've already got a motion a second to accept the rewrite. That's how it started the discussion. I made the motion. Yeah, clerk?
Ruck,
Is there a
actually.
motion on the floor?
Yeah, there was,
to Accept the rewrite.
yes, and it was by Ruck and then Nelson.
Any more discussion on? the rewrite? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thanks, Paul. All right, now we can get to the discussion and possible action on a comprehensive trail network plan, recommendations,
Been brutal, guys.
environmental.
We're gonna-
You guys are gonna get the ball.
Make it even more brutal.
No. I want to see a picture of you cleaning up the trail.
Chairman Arcan, have you all had a break? I know you've been going 4 hours. Have you?
No, no call break if they need one, otherwise we'll have. Someone calling a break, you calling a break?
No, the reason I ask is, well, this is gonna take a little while.
Yeah.
We're pivoting here. In lieu of our consultant presenting, we're gonna have County Planner Tim Anderson present, as well as Parks and Trails Coordinator, myself are here to answer questions as well.
We have a request for a 5-minute break.
Go, Brand, go.
Yeah.
I'll go with you, Greg.
As long as 3 still stay in this room, we still have a quorum. Has to step out if you don't have.
I think they have candy in the clerk's office.
How did we?
Oh, we wanna get out there.
We have
5 minutes.
Okay.
I'm taking it home for myself.
All right, we're done with our break. We'll have a discussion of possible action of the comprehensive.
Guess that's me. All right. I'm Tim Anderson, the county planner, for those of you that don't know me. I think everybody does. But we're here today to talk about where we're at in the comprehensive trail network planning process and to go over some of the background as to how we got here, talk about some of the decision-making that got us here, and then ultimately showcase the recommended projects that have come through from both the Parks and Trails Advisory Group and then the Environmental Services Committee that have seen this before you guys. And then at the end, we're going to look for you guys to make your own recommendations as to what projects you would like to send forward for the county board consideration at the meeting next week, to include in the 2022 budget. That's the reason we're here today. We've accelerated this project to try and get some ballpark figures in front of you today. Yes, going forward after today, or after the county board meeting, when we get those identified projects, we can actually drill down further into them and get more appropriate or more dialed in cost estimates after we know a little bit more about the direction the county wants to head, and we can refine those projects going forward towards the end of this trail planning process that will sum up early next year in January. So today, we're here to talk about projects list and what kind of has come through the process. So this project has involved a robust public input process. We worked with our consultant, Alta Planning and Design, and neighborhood planners to design these 3 steps primarily. The stakeholder meetings that were held this summer, we'll go over those in a little bit of detail in a couple minutes. An online mapping tool. So they were given a map where you could identify areas by user type that you would like to see new opportunities, or areas where you think gaps could be closed for the trail network, or places where you think additional recreational opportunities could happen. Also did an online survey that asked a bunch of different questions depending on what user group you were a part of. So if you answered that you were part of the ATV group, you answered questions about what kind of things you would like to see, where you would like to see them. And if you weren't, then they skipped you. So we asked just the people that participated in those activities what their input were for updating our trail network plan. And then finally, we'll summarize a little bit about what we. For the deep dive, this was a critical piece. We met with each of the individual user groups. So we have 6 identified in this project. We have ATV, UTV, snowmobiling, biking, pedestrians, hiking, equestrians, and cross-country skiing. Each of them had a couple-hour meeting on the 13th, 14th, and 15th of July, where we sat down with a conglomerate of people that were interested in these different user groups and asked them primarily what they feel the assets are currently in our trail network, some challenges, and then what are some of the opportunities to make it better. We had good participation in each of these, and we got some really good information as to what these user groups are looking for from the county. So from the user group process, both the stakeholder groups, meetings, public input, the web map and the survey, kind of develop some overall goal statements for each of these user groups, and then some key themes. So for ATVs and UTVs, they would prefer long distance segments to loops, primarily on natural surface trails, connected to towns, and villages, and connecting to the state network. We're looking for long distance stuff. They could utilize the trail system that on the state rails, side paths if necessary. And like you'll see through all of these, as you might guess, each user group said, hey, we like more opportunities. Not unique. If you have any questions along the way, just fire away. Snowmobile user group. Again, long distance trails that connect to the state trail systems across county lines. And they like to utilize public lands for their trail system. As they've seen over time, reliance on private easements or private access to trails has kind of limited or changed their route directions and limited some of their abilities to connect areas and created gaps in some of their trail systems. So they would prefer to have that long-term sustainability for their trails. They're losing the season too. They average about 4 or 5 weeks already. So depending on how the weather goes, sometimes you get 2-3 months, and sometimes you get a week or a day or nothing. Weather dependent for them. Pedestrian or hiking group, accessible trails. That was a key product. So ability for everyone to use it, whether you're a fully functional human being or if you have some physical challenges, to be able to go out and recreate. Safe places to walk and have family activities and so on. ADA accessible was something that was key for them, and the quiet nature aspect of recreation. Equestrian user group, definitely we're looking at a variety for different abilities and different types of trails. Looking for those amenities that make horseback riding a lot easier or more feasible to do, such as mounting blocks, water, hitching posts, parking. They're particular about the type of substrate or soils that they were on for the sandy locations, and then also looking for indoor riding opportunities, such as a rodeo. Bicycling, connectivity between communities and enhancing the long distance off-roads, connections, and recreation and tourism. Mountain biking, so this was kind of one that had like a two-headed monster. So we have the cycling group that wants to do on-road stuff, the road biking, and then we have the mountain biking segment, and they have two different visions, two different goals in terms of the recreational opportunities. You can see that represented in some of the trail opportunities that they've talked. And finally, for user group goals, cross-country skiing. They love this location up by Balsam Branch, where it's the Bible camp, kind of Garfield, and then directly adjacent is our own D.D. Kennedy and Auburn properties. We want to enhance that primarily, and provide maybe some additional access for additional uses out there. Parking area is getting redone currently up in Garfield, and they want to make this a bigger connected system. So that's individual user groups, kind of what they were looking for. I want to make sure you guys understood the kind of the goals and where the user groups were saying they want to go with recreation in the county. These are kind of the key takeaways from everyone. I mentioned every group feels that they need more trails, more facilities. Not surprising. one of the key things is our lack of public land. You know, sometimes we get compared to Burnett or Sawyer or Barron counties. We've got significantly less public land in some of those areas. That presents a challenge. And how you look at this. Long distance trails and connections, not only here, but to the neighboring counties, including Minnesota. Compatibility issues between motorized and non-motorized users and how to handle that. Evaluation of the county forest, how much of that is utilized or underutilized for recreational purposes. And let's see, volunteer groups have been a key aspect to recreation so far. Kind of just a few tidbits from this slide. Any questions so far? Kind of keep it moving. So now we're getting into project evaluations. So the projects that were identified in this process came from the user groups and the process in terms of stakeholder discussions. So each of those projects were put into a list, and then we worked with our consultant and PTAG to develop a system of ranking criteria. Do that next. This is kind of a sample shot of our evaluation. We have a project type, ranking of 1 to 3, 3 being easily implementable, 1 being not very easily implementable. We're talking about whether it's a construction project or planning. One of those two designations, sustainability, meaning like what's the cost of maintaining that trail system once you get it up and running. Safety improvement, does it improve safety for the user groups that are out there? Community connections, and that was a key theme that you recall. Does it connect our key corridors, our key communities in the county? Closing trail gaps, we have some spurs, you know, where it's just dead ends, dead ends, dead ends. We close those gaps and create more loops. That's what a lot of is not out and back, but making connections out there. Recreational impact, how many user groups does it impact? So we try to gauge through this criteria process, this ranking process. If it benefits multiple user groups, it should get a higher score, probably because it costs less money for the county to do so. Incompatibility, this is kind of flip side of that. Does it detract from the user groups if you combine those entities together? Users on the same trail. Environmental impact, I think that's mandatory. Rough cost, you know, is it expensive? So it gets a low ranking. If it's not expensive, it gets a higher ranking. Does it require land acquisition? We own it. We want to give priority to say, like, if we own it, it should rank higher. Grants, obviously, that's a key piece to funding this operation. So if grants are available, how much? You know, assign the value for that. And then does this align with our partners? Like partnering with the state of Wisconsin, or the town of Garfield, or those kind of things. Does this project align with their vision? Make sense? And based on this, you can see we give it a score. And each one of these was weighted. I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but we talked about some of these maybe have a little more impact. We don't want to say that like one of them is 4 or 5 times as important, but give it a little bit of priority to it. You can see 1.1 for some of these, 1.3. So we give a little bit of deference to project criteria. And as a result, you get a score. Those were shown as highest ranking priority projects. That was brought to PTAG for their consideration. In the last couple of months with PTAG. We're getting to the meat and potatoes here. PTAG ranking. We'll show you the actual project list, but this is just kind of a summary slide going forward. So PTAG rankings, ATVs, Sterling expansion. We'll talk about that. Woodley Dale Dam Trailhead is being construction snowmobiles, so that's the property that's right off Highway 8. A good spot to tie in and happily people pull off and tie into the network there and give a nice trailhead. And then hiking and foot trails, providing connection between D.D. Kennedy, Auburn. So, or I forget, the main goal of this project is to identify a project that can be funded for each of these user groups. Trying to get a win for each of these user groups. That each of these user groups are valuable. So that's where we're at. Two more. Equestrian. Feasibility study looking at the county owned land. Projects out on county lands for improving camping and trail access. Summers Lake and Mackey Lake were kind of discussed, but overall county land. Look where equestrian could be added. Biking, similar. You'll see that these three will have feasibility studies. Equestrian, biking, and cross country skiing on county lands, where they would be most appropriate to expand trail networks out there. Biking also had an enhancing the Yankee Dancer trailhead. Cross country skiing, bring the county land skiing facilities near the Boston Bears. So there's some development of cross country skiing trails out there right now, but you know, the whole facility kind of acts like a warming hut, dressing area, storage lockers, amenities that would really help that area become a destination. Here we are with the actual project list. We'll go user group by user.
Those are what we handed out.
This is all in front of you, so if you have trouble reading this, you can get more detail on this sheet. So the green showcases the construction project, blue showcases capital planning. Top project for ATV, UTV, give you a little more detail. Expanding that Sterling Trail system that exists up there already. It was just a few miles, and a little bit already this year, but wanting to continue to expand it up to the Virginia County line. And also in that same area, add an intensive ATV park. So there's one over in Barron County. It's an intensive ATV. So were the areas that they thought those were the two projects they thought. Finally, there's feasibility study, ATV, UTV connection between the city and Falls. That includes, not exclusively talking about the Gandy, but
The icons, if you notice, both on the handout and in the presentation, those icons represent the recreational impact of the other user groups. So what I'm saying is that that project would benefit those other user groups. Even though this is deemed an ATV, UTV project, for example, the Sterling expansion, that will also enhance the snowmobilers.
One thing I would add as well is that timeline for completion, something to keep an eye on each of these projects. We'll have a different timeline for completion, and that'll help prioritize them.
Right, and I guess if we're on, and it's not on the slide, but also we have the project costs on the handouts. The first column is the total project cost. And we added another column of county actual costs after grants are secured and subsidizing those projects. And then at the bottom of each page is the estimated project costs for those.
Well, no, grants aren't guaranteed. We have to apply for them, but we just wanted to give you an idea. There are grants out there that would offset. Any questions on the ATV projects? Again, they're in front of you. Snowmobile projects. Constructing the trailhead at Woodley Dam. So that's a county owned piece of property. about 8 acres there. And it's right on Highway 8, so it's highly visible, especially Highway 8. Could be used as a trailhead for any walking trails that might be on the county property there. And would help maybe split up the parking, because there's some parking issues in St. Croix Falls for snowmobile trailers in the winter time. So maybe give them a separate spot to park and get them. Second is building and expanding parking areas at entry points along the community. Kind of an evaluation to say, where is there the most need for additional parking facilities? This could also, of course, impact a multitude of different user groups, the ones that are currently on the gated answer, and future ones, of course. So if you improve the parking for snowmobiles, we can. Questions on this? Equestrian planning projects. Feasibility study on county forest, create new loops and trails, campgrounds for the Polk community. So this, along with cross-country skiing and biking, have been identified as feasibility studies that could go on the county forest, based on the type of use these groups want to have on them, where the most appropriate spot might be. How to provide those facilities out there. Another feasibility study about how to open the gate. Obviously, that would require us working with the DNR and updates. Construction projects for equestrian. Develop the equestrian trail system on county property. That kind of ties in with feasibility studies. Where on the county forest would be developing new specific one. It was mentioned at our that enhancing the existing facilities that exist out on Governor Knowles might be a good idea. And we have county property that's directly adjacent to it. Some of that is being utilized for some ATV camping expansion. There is property that the county directly adjacent to. Governor Knowles system.
I got a question about that. Again, I don't, will there be an opportunity that we're gonna see these specific projects with numbers to them that we're actually gonna be asking to vote, or should I discuss right now, like that one, I think should be removed from the project list? And would be the right opportunity to talk about that?
I think maybe when we go through all of them and then we'll have
Okay.
a discussion about them.
Sounds good.
And then finally, adding parking near the midway point of the Stellar. Again, just like we talked about on the game answer, adding parking facilities for this user group on the Stellar would also make it parking facilities are available. Mutually beneficial. Connecting the DD Kennedy area to the Wildern Wildlife. Find the most feasible route. So cross-country skiing place segment has been addressed through an easement. Doesn't necessarily apply in the summertime. There's an option to go along the road there on 120th. Sounds like the town's iffy on that. All the options out there. That was the top project. And then adding restroom facilities along the answer and stays. And talked about parking, potentially, adding other amenities like restroom facilities.
Yeah. Talking about the, that's a Candy answer.
Right here, yeah, this is expanding restroom facilities on the. Yep.
For example, Pushing as a facility. What is this, the consultant's recommendation that you're talking about?
They have gleaned information from the projects based on public input as to what they've heard the residents and the people that participate in this process. One of them was adding amenities, one of them was adding trail miles.
I guess one of my criteria is, are there standards out there for a trail such as the Gandy Dancer Trail, that there should be restroom facilities every X miles or whatever?
I'm sure there's best practices.
Did anyone do that?
We have not looked at it
Arithmetic or not?
at this point, no. We haven't done that.
The site is yet to be determined.
This is what this is for, is to say we're gonna look at it.
Determine that spot.
We're going to determine that site.
It has not been paneled.
This, I'm confused a little bit. What you're showing up there now is a totally different document than that you passed out.
No, it should be the same.
Double-sided.
It's the third or fourth page.
It's double-sided, so yeah. That's, but each of the projects based on the heading at the top should be the same number.
I think all of these have dollar amounts on them, and I'm going back to this question, for example, on restroom. The assumption of how many you're putting in where and what the cost is going to be.
Yeah,
There were certain assumptions made to come up with these costs? Or?
yes, yeah. Like, I think the cost for restroom facilities was, I think, they had one somewhere along.
Just taking it by way of example.
So usually it's singular like this. So we're going to approve one trailhead, approve one restroom, approve one parking areas per single entity. And there's a lot still to be fleshed out with those projects. You know, you go from a concept to actually doing like what you actually really want with those projects, then they're truly possible. We're just getting planning level costs right now. Give you a figure to deal with.
Right, and our work isn't done, particularly with our consultant, Alta. When and if these projects get approved by the county board, there's additional planning throughout the rest of the year to work on the identified priority projects. So what we're bringing to you is for your consideration. And also provide us and our consultant with direction on what projects need further planning.
I think one thing is important to let Mr. Pritchard know too is, P-TAG kicked this list around, which you had all the citizens involved. We were on this committee, we've been on it for a year with all the user groups. Then they did all the public studies. They had Alta rank them, and then they had staff rank them, Mo rank them. So you've got a lot of people that have spent a year diving down into this. You know, it wasn't just Alta. It wasn't just that. The guy who hired that.
Follow-up question in that vein, I guess, again, I'm just using this as one example on it. Is there a file somewhere that someone, if you put a dollar amount, you're saying we're going to put so many restaurants on restrooms on any dance trail? Is file somewhere that says that and it's colors?
Tip. For example, on the Gandy Dancer, we have a cost, I think it's $50,000 to $105,000. And that range is reflective of the development options that are listed in that project. So if it's one restroom or two restrooms or benches or water fountains, the low range of that cost is based upon the cost of one restroom. If the project identifies more than one restroom, if there's benches or drinking fountains or two restrooms. That's why we have that range of costs.
Also depends on utilities, if there's utilities, sanitary sewer out there, if we're just doing a huff cut. So again, we still have more planning work to do. We just need to identify which projects that we need to focus on, not only for our consultant, but for us throughout the rest of the year. And we need to ensure that resources are allocated for 2022 to be able to implement these construction projects, which are in green, and the ones that are in blue are.
So again, to reiterate, we're trying to choose one project, so I guess we look at it as a singular thing, like one restroom somewhere. Likely. See the feasibility study for county forest showing up here again. And then enhancing the gateway trailhead in St. Croix Falls. You know that the city has a building there, tourism centers there, bike rack, a little bit of wayfinding. Bathrooms, for example, aren't open all the time. No shelter, no access to water sometimes. So improving that area for use is so improving ski trails and amenities on the county land at DD Kennedy. Development options, changing a warm hut, restrooms, storage lockers, lighted trail segments as well. Out there to improve it. Get a study of the county forest again for this use, so biking, track country skiing, and equestrian. And to enhance this cross country skiing area by Balsam Branch, developing a recreation management plan between the county and Bible Camp. Seamless, based on the user's perspective, seamless of the trail. How full they have, all the planning, all the construction projects listed out. You'll see the number here. XC4, that's cross country skiing, which is a hiking one. P is equestrian, S is snowmobile, P is biking, A is ATV. And you'll see the corresponding location. They're pretty spread out. Questions on this? So now we went through all the different projects for the different user groups. And what you saw as recommended projects that came through, those were the ones that were recommended from the Environmental Services Committee. In your packet, that's what you will see as well. So you have an opportunity to make a decision that you would like to continue to forward on what the Environmental Services Committee recommended, or choose your own projects. Change the number of them. We've heard that giving the county board some options might be a good idea, and that's why you'll see more than one project per user group so far. But ultimately, the county board for the budget process will be choosing the all project for construction or utilization of funds.
You have numbers with these projects?
Yeah, so E3, Chris, I think is what you were referring to, is that E3?
Yeah, do you guys have though that list
Bring back the list.
with the actual numbers with beside them? I think that's what Mike was asking for too.
Not on this screen, but we have it.
In the handout.
Fully in the handout?
It was too small to read. Put it on the screen.
Sure.
So each one of them has a cost. And in red at the bottom, you'll see an estimated cost, and that's just the mean, it's the average number, total cost.
So just being on that P-tag and being the equestrian representative of one of them on the P-tag, we had two of us. I asked a bunch of people that have been staying at the Governor Knowles campground up there that the state has, and even this last weekend, it was maybe 60-70% full. The lower campground, the day camping was only less than half full, and at Wolf Creek there, the bar, they have a bunch of land out there. There's only maybe half a dozen trailers. So I asked, there was about 6 lady riders that I asked about that were camping this weekend. I said, do you feel like there's need to do additional camping out there? And it was unanimous. No one said. So one of the concerns I have is the last thing I want to do is, and we've talked about this in PTAG, is that we spend money on a trail or on a parking or campground that no one uses. So I personally, looking at the cost of that on the equestrian side, I would remove that one. What was the cost on the equestrian side for that specific project?
Upwards of 250.
Yeah, I just can't see him spending $250,000 on something that might only get used once or twice a year. If it really was busy, I think there's opportunities. And if we're going to create other equestrian places in the county, they'll have other places to go. So I think it may take some impact even off of that. So that's one of the things on equestrian I would make a recommendation not to spend the money on. Then the other question I had was on the Stour Trail parking facility. Did we put in $200,000 of that trail fund into this last year's budget for the Stour Trail rustic trail or development along the Stour? So I was just curious, when we start budgeting these, what that expansion, I don't know what that extra parking lot would cost. What was the cost of that one? I want to listen to Rhonda.
14 to 55,000.
How much?
14 to 55.
55. Would there be enough money in the current budget? I mean,
200,000?
yeah.
Yes.
Now, when you, Chad, when you said, because I thought you said we only have 900,000 left in that trail fund.
Yeah, so,
But we have carryover money that would carry over?
well, that would include the carryover, the 992,000, including the carryover.
That is the carryover.
That-
Okay.
That's the amount of unspent from the.
So there's not
200,000.
more.
No,
That's it.
right.
Okay. Well, that, the one at Governor Knowles, I would definitely remove. But, I mean, if anyone else cares about horseback riding, or you guys want to keep it because one of you guys want to buy a horse someday, maybe you guys want it. But I'm not worried about catching flack over that from the equestrian community. They're already, if they want to do it, they can do it, because they already are doing it for the UTV, right, possibly?
Yeah.
I just don't know that we have to mix those uses at that specific spot. I just wouldn't budget that kind of money for that. So I don't know if that's a consensus, or we have to vote on removing something. How did the other committee do it? They added some things. They took away. Are we having to vote on this? So there's a record of it?
They just did consensus, and then I think they did
Consensus.
a motion at the end to say that this is.
So that's what I had on equestrian, and I'm not gonna tell the other user group what they should take or keep, but equestrian, I wouldn't feel comfortable wanting to spend that kind of money on
So at this point, it's been vetted by PTAG, Environmental Services. Now it's coming to you. I do think you make a good point, you being the equestrian kind of lead on that PTAG committee. If doesn't mean we would never do it, So let's take it off the priority list so we can focus on the other
I
things.
think that's what this group needs to hear is that all these projects, there's many more projects than this.
You'll see it in the end.
You're gonna show that list.
Well, you have them in your packets,
Okay.
the back 3 sheets.
Maybe just explain it to those.
Yeah, that those projects that weren't quote unquote recommended for consideration for the budget aren't going away. They're just becoming included in the trail network plan itself as kind of a roadmap for the future. Here's what we also heard as potential projects so that we can pursue them in the future. Same thing with these feasibility studies. They're kind of forward-looking, future-looking. And when you do a feasibility study like that, you'll get some potential answers about where those new uses or where expanded uses.
So the list of projects that didn't make the recommendation, they're also included in your handout. They're the ones in white. So there's a lot more projects that were brought forward, which were vetted again by the Trails Advisory Group staff, as well as Environmental Services. Be transparent there in your packet. Going back to E3 again, did take the liberty to call Governor Knowles' superintendent to ask about the Trade River Campground. That's the equestrian campground up there that Chris was referring to. See if they had any user data. In the spring and fall, that campground on the weekends is at 70-75% capacity. During the week, it's near zero. This summer, they're at best, they're at 20% capacity. Naturally, because of the bugs. So hearing that, obviously the facility amenities out there are meeting the needs of the equestrian folks. So I guess I'm just pointing that out because that supports Chris's observation last week. Talking to his colleagues. So that particular initiative could go away.
I think it came through our groups that, sure, there are times at certain years where you do go up there and it's full. I haven't, but even though it says that they're all full, you drive up there and there's a few spots still open, even though you go online and you log in for an overnight camping. You still get up there and they're not full. And they got capacity, and someday, sure, it's great to be on a list, but it'd be terrible to say we're gonna spend 250 grand on stuff and then drive by and never see a trailer in the parking lot. I wouldn't want to. Are you guys okay if we just eliminate that one for sure? Does anyone care? Yeah.
I'm hearing consensus, otherwise speak now or forever hold your peace. You want to go through these like user group by user group and decide what the projects you want to recommend move forward are? How would you like to?
I think you're doing fine. That one's the first one we came up with, is someone said, let's not do it.
Some of these could be done and not all of them, or whatever, or criteria for what would stay on the list and what wouldn't.
What you recommend, so we have projects that came through the process, saying like these are the ones that floated to the top. What we're looking for is not that these will never get done, but what are the ones that you want the county board to consider pursuing in the next budget? We're looking at the cost, looking at the timeline for completion, what it'll actually do for these different user groups to address their goals. What do you think the top project should be that the county board should consider? You guys could, I could
Make a sandwich. Your presentation, the luxury of doing that, but I, for one, would like to have little time to reflect on it. Parks and trails are very near and dear to me. And general thing, support doing all we can to make Polk County a more hospital place for users of parks and trails and outdoor recreation. So I'm all for it in that sense. Sitting here and coming up and picking this, that, and that are the ones I want, and the ones I missed in my duty as a supervisor, but I'd like.
This project was accelerated to get you this information so that could be considered for the 2022 budget. Doesn't have to be. That's a discussion for you guys to have as supervisors.
The other would be to have some global amount that we want to spend in 2020. Parks and trails projects of this sort. Make a decision later down the line.
I think something that might help Mike on this is that those are the questions we asked too. So I think the way I look at this is pick a thing, this development of equestrian trail systems on county properties. Almost, and it says to be determined. You know, again, the equestrian people, so they put Mackey Lake up here and they put Summers Lake. There's not an equestrian person yet that has gone out and looked at those sites that say that's what we would go riding a horse on. So why would we develop Mackey Lake or Summers Lake if the equestrian community isn't going to go do it? So environmental services said the same thing. So if you put a heat into that meeting, because that's where they do trails, we're just funding. So the trails and all this is done environmental services. So I went to that meeting to hear the discussion so I could understand it. Now, what I took out of that is these are all just to be determined. Everything on this is to be determined. But we're given discretion to say, here's some funding. We approved to move the funding over from this lime quarry fund into the county budget this year, that staff is going to start working on these projects. They're going to take months to years, and they're going to be going back to environmental services, get approval on every project. So let's say, Mike, like you brought up, is it one bathroom? Is it two bathrooms? Well, when that project starts to get developed on the Gandy for the walkers or the bicyclists, you'll have an opportunity as a supervisor to say, hey, here's this plan now. It's being developed. I want to put another $100,000 into this to build another bathroom. But today's not the day that we're going to get into the weeds on how many bathrooms or where these trails are. These are just concepts to, if I'm saying it the way it needs to be said, is that?
Yeah, we haven't had the time to flesh that stuff out to that level of detail. It's just
Right.
the fact of the matter.
We're all going to have an opportunity to, if we really want to dive into these, like I'm an equestrian guy, I'm going to be very involved in what happens on equestrian. I don't really care what the bicycles guys want, but if you care, you should get involved with that when those projects start.
And regarding the money, there's two approaches you could use. There's 992 some thousand. I haven't looked at it a couple weeks since I gave Bob that number, but 992,000 left of the lime quarry money. You guys could select them and you could put in the budget resolution, appropriate some appropriate funding not to exceed. So basically, if you say you want 992,000 from that and $400,000 from the general fund, then in the resolution, we appropriate $1.392 million in some appropriate funding for these projects, not to exceed the total value.
The projects are still have to be determined though.
And if we use the term some appropriate, then it's going to be what it actually comes in as.
Because these projects that are listed here are above the current funding we have in the lime quarry fund, right?
Add them all together, yes. Now, however, logistically, as you start, some of them are studies, others have grants, others we have to study first, and it would be 2023 before we start really spending money on it anyway. So
We can put all this money we can put it all in the budget and it's just going to get carried over every year as these projects need the money, right? You're not going to spend it all in 1 year.
Correct. So we could, put what we need this year and then we could put, the 992,000, for example. And we plan on putting the rest in next.
In that vein, are these considered capital improvement projects or not?
Some of them are.
Would they all be or not?
Well, not, I don't know, with the studies.
The studies would be if they lead to a project.
They lead to a project. Remember, as Chris was saying, these are conceptual projects. Adding parking on the Stour Trail at these two locations. Right now, that's a project idea. Nothing's been put to paper, no findings of Indian
What I'm
burial ground
getting
has
at-
been done yet. So that comes later on. We'll find out how feasible it is to do the project.
That the first question, when that parking lot or whatever is constructed, it's a capital improvement project. Is that
Correct.
correct?
Correct. It improves our
So
assets.
I don't know exactly what our procedure is for approving a capital procedure budget list. But would all of these go through some procedure where they come back and we would have a chance to look at them as to the specifics?
I agree. That, and I think that all the board does want to feel that way, is that if we're going to fund these, we want to be involved in saying, yeah, let's, just because we put 900,000 in, I think what you're saying is, and I feel the same way, before you go develop the project, spend the money, does it come back to our committee with the final number and the scope of the work, right, Mike?
Yeah, and I don't know where it crosses the line from being proposed an idea that is not a capital improvement item, and it gets what are the next steps that have to be taken where it actually becomes a capital improvement budget item.
This process here gets the ball rolling to start. We want to look further into these projects. Once you get to your final design and all that, just like with the building, then you appropriate the funds and the funding for it.
We'll approve those.
Then you approve those at that point.
I can have no particular problem putting $900,000 from the quarry fund into the 2023 capital improvement budget for 2023 and 2024. However you want to do it. However,
That won't be enough, though.
This is not the last, this is not
And
the
then
last step.
the
that
other
says,
question I have is how much would we normally be spending if we didn't have the quarry fund on parks and parks and trails?
We've increased spending a lot last couple of years. Because before we didn't spend much.
I would spend the amount we've been spending plus
Hey,
quarry.
you could throw all the ARPA funds in it too, Mike. I'd vote with you on that.
The ARPA.
Coming closer together here.
So,
Wait, I want to sit by Pritchard.
so getting back to Mr. Pritchard's question, really what needs to be done is either the committee needs to set a firm value. We will not budget more than X number of dollars in 2023 for whatever projects we settle on, or the committee needs to pick those projects and then we budget the dollar value for those projects. But either way, they need to be incorporated into the 2022 5-year capital.
At this
Fair
point,
to
that
move
will
that we
provide
put
time.
With the quarry, 900,000 plus the amount that we put in 2021 from wherever.
Well, that's already allocated for other stuff in parks. So anything for this, your funding sources for this are going to be your lime quarry, and then, when I say lime quarry, the restrictor, the assigned funds from the lime quarry sale. You could use that, you could use ARPA funds, or you could use fund balance.
But what's the amount in our 2021 budget for capital improvements for parks?
Those are already for specific projects.
But they're already for specific
Well, I
projects.
know they are.
Hold on. Let me find it real quick.
Got your guys' presentation up, and it sounds like we got consensus. We can take a motion to move.
259,000.
It came from somewhere. It didn't come from the library or some of it.
Well, it's coming out of levy.
We need projects for Alta to investigate further.
Yeah, you want us to fine tune this list, though. You want to go through it.
They're under contract to refine the top project.
I could work on all of them, but we just need direction, which ones
Yeah. So
we'll
let's-
recommend
you
to
just
the
got-
full
you just
county.
got one for the question.
Budget purposes, should we be making a motion that X dollars goes in the?
We will. I think we just need to go, let's just finish this list and let's just see if there's any more we should check off.
Eliminated in it.
Yeah, I'll start at the
Yeah.
ATV and CD stuff. We can work our way down.
And I just, again, my earlier comment was I didn't feel comfortable making comments specifically. I haven't seen this list of what happened.
Again, the cost estimates are on your handouts. We weren't able to put them on the PowerPoint.
I'm just trusting on PTAG, I'm trusting on staff, all of that, and environmental services, which went through this whole list. And the only one I thought they missed the boat on that I'm aware of was the equestrian one. All the other ones, I thought they had it right on.
I have one question. Why is the PTAG score on the second one under ATV, UTV at 0? Is that because it's not feasible or?
There was some discussion there that they felt like, paraphrasing here, that, the addition was controversial, to the Gandy, but when you talk to them at the ATV group in the stakeholder meetings, that was maybe their top priority.
And again, when you take PTAG, we all got dots. We had 2 people missing. And, it was, well, do we really want to be controversial? But on the study, we felt like the study was more important than actually score.
Okay.
So what we asked for is study to be done.
Right. And it's a long-term thing.
It's a long-term thing, but at least it gives everyone the opportunity to say, we at least heard you, we'll study it. And
There's an environmental services recommendation.
let's just keep rolling through them.
Okay, anything on these?
And if you note, A1 is actually 2 projects. It's continuing the work that they're doing in phase 2 and phase 3 in the Sterling area. But also the addition of a intensive ATV park like you see on Rabbit Trail and Barrington.
And some of that stuff we
And
talked
those-
about isn't even costing the county money.
Well, there is some enhancements with,
Sure.
we talked to Barron County about an intensive park. If they were to do it again, they would have had lighting, they would have fencing, parking lot, etc.
One of the things I did here, and I do agree with environmental services and being on PTAG and listening, there's a lot of money put in here for studies. I agree with environmental services group that we need to pay a consultant to go out and study the forest trails and the trailheads. And to say, oh yeah, there's a road right here. And you're already allowed to ride your horse, walk, bike, you're already allowed to do it all. That's where I think it comes back, Mike, where I feel the same way as I don't want to pay $50,000 for someone to study to say, hey, there's a forest logging road. And hey, let's do a study to tell Mo how to make a parking lot there. When if you take the user group out there and the user group says, yeah, this is a good place we want to go, there's your studies done. We already own the land. There's no reason to pay for a study to tell the highway department how to build a small gravel parking lot, or even the one project that was at the Woodley Dam. There's already gravel, there's an old parking lot already there. Why do we need a study to say, hey, we need another inch of gravel on top of gravel? And that's where I think a lot of us want that opportunity to make sure we're not going to study this thing up. How do we catch that so we're not, but I know you need plans for projects too, though. So I get it. If we're going to get a grant, we have to have a plan.
Like a master
If you're going to write a master plan, you need that.
study.
But people get, elected officials get concerned when we start spending money on study after study after study. And we'll hear about it. Hopefully, just expressing some of the supervisor's opinion from environmental services. They're concerned about the studies.
Still good? Stay in there then, even though we talked about feasibility studies? Snowmobile, trailhead at Woodley Dam, expanding parking area, it's along there.
So how much money do you got in that project, Woodley Dam?
0 to 125K.
So there's a big range.
Depends on if you're gonna add a bunch of amenities.
So are we gonna add 125, or do we say, right now, why don't you develop it with half of that amount of money?
Can you get for half?
Well, can you give us any?
The number Tim gave you is costs after a potential grant. You know, so you're gonna be there 30 to 80,000, depending if you get a grant to cover part of that cost.
But what are we actually doing there? What actually,
Security fencing, I know was brought up, lighting.
security fence?
Trailhead, it's developing a trailhead at the Woodley Dam property, which is more than just.
Defining the county property, one from the motel, the entryway going in, and then the proper size parking lot for how many trailers you want to get in there. Security was brought up at environmental services at the hotel. Would that mean adding exterior lighting or something? That could be determined later. But the range right now,
Nice place to go
would
park.
be that range 0 to 125 was based on, there was potential grants to go along with that.
Again, if we come back, you guys are gonna kick this around, you're gonna come back to a committee and go, well, it's only 50, we budgeted. So in the budget right now, you're budgeting 125 then.
But we haven't yet, waiting for this committee to say.
Well, I know, but I mean, how do we know if that's the right number?
Well, that's what I was saying. That's why the budget resolution when written. What I would recommend is you say, we approve for this project, some appropriate, not to exceed 125,000. Some appropriate covers the actual cost, and then you put your ceiling there.
So we'll come back to a committee to approve that, right? Whatever that appropriate number is.
Correct.
Okay.
So I think we'd have to go through that, bring that project back to the committee, and this is what we're gonna build there. And the committee might want more amenities at that point. To hear from the group that they want restrooms or something.
Questions or concerns about these two snowmobile projects then? Any projects? County forest study,
So on the forest study, you have that through multiple user groups, right?
Yep.
There's a separate number for each user group, or are you combining them all and saying we're gonna break it up?
they each have a separate number right now. 50.
Yeah, so why would it cost 50 grand for the equestrians to figure out whether they're gonna ride down a trail? For a study. That's all that is a plan, a study. Where's the 50 grand going? Who's getting the 50 grand for someone to tell us it's okay to ride a horse down a county? Because we weren't talking about making new trails, or were we a little bit? These could be
Yeah.
loops, so there
This
could
is
be
definitely-
loops.
Yeah, this is definitely an investigation of where new trails.
That's not the cost of making the loop, it's just investigating it. See, I would personally keep the project there, but I would take that 50 down to 5 grand. No way it's gonna cost 50 grand to determine where the horse is gonna ride in the woods. No, I got a hard time with that.
Maybe you have thought, I'm just
Maybe
wondering.
maybe there's more to it.
It is more to it.
Okay,
The feasibility study does an environmental assessment, right? Develops several options.
so let's go through each step. Environmental impact. We're already allowed to ride a horse in there. What's the environmental impact? We're not gonna ride through wetlands. Horse wants to ride through a wetland.
We're gonna identify a trail.
It's already there,
It's already there on county forest.
so you're gonna map it. That's where I'm getting a hard time with.
Well, we're
50
doing
grand
it
to
for
do that.
3 different user groups.
So you got 150 grand then.
We have
I would say personally, put 50 grand in for all 3 user groups. Then you could take another 100 grand out of it. If you need to come back for more money, come back for more money. But I even have a hard time putting 50 grand in that budget too.
For budgetary purposes, would it make sense that we look at the top priority for each of those user groups for 2021 and look at those individual projects? Otherwise, we're gonna swim around in this thing for hours.
So these are all
I
all
understand.
projected to go to county board.
I understand
Not
that.
just one.
Well, so we're gonna budget for all of them today?
Yep. And this is what came out of PTAG, all the environmental services does. Now, we're the money guys, so I'm saying $150,000 to study our county forest land and where the trails are, where it's at. To me, it's a lot of money.
It's gonna require a lot of breakdown from this point to take each one of these projects on.
No, I'm just talking the feasibility study of looking at, these user groups already can use the county land. I could go ride my horse down any county road right now. Why do we have to spend 150 grand to see the bike, horse, the cross-country skier? Why do we have to budget 150 grand to study that? When we can already do it. What we should be spending the 150 grand is developing a parking lot. At one of these places that the user groups all say, we'll use that. Because the user group in Polk County, you go get a study done, but if you don't have the local user group saying, I'm gonna go there, we have Summers Lake now. We've developed it, we put a bathroom there, we have well there, and it's a cross-country skiing, hiking trail. No one uses it. So the equestrian people said the same thing, you wanna turn to equestrian now. Gonna go use it, or is no one ever gonna use that trail system?
I think the question that is being raised by this is where on the county forest should these 3 different user groups go?
Right.
And we can identify the existing conditions. It also talks about expansion. That was part of this question. So evaluating that is not just showcasing what we have out there. It's where else should it go? What are the amenities? You can study whatever you want.
Well, I understand that, but we don't have enough money to study whatever we want.
I'm just saying it's your decision.
I know that. I make a recommendation, I'll just do it instead of talking about it, that the feasibility studies on county land, on all the user groups, we budget 50 grand for the feasibility study on where they go. That'd be a recommendation.
You're looking at just T1, Chris,
I'm looking at any,
or are you looking at everything?
no, I'm looking at all the user, on that feasibility study on county forest, the 17,000 acres we own, create new trails, loops, and campgrounds for equestrian use. To me, I see, if I was just gonna say as an equestrian, the way I understand it, listen to environmental services, then we've already been asked for the equestrian people to go out with Ben and whoever else, mow. Maybe you grab an equestrian group, we're gonna go out and look at 2 or 3 sites and say, yeah, this looks good, we'd ride it here. There's your feasibility study, it's over. Now you go into construction.
What about the other user?
Well,
All their pieces.
so that's the same thing. They're gonna take the bicycle people out. They're gonna take the cross-country skiing people out. They're gonna say, would you guys, I'm not gonna ride a horse when they're cross-country skiing. Would you guys ride in this same area? If we developed a parking lot here for multiple user groups, I think the study, and that's what I heard environmental services say, that the study's done. It's not like we're doing land acquisition. We're not for a study. I just think I'd like to lower the overall number going into that we're taking out of general fund because we don't have enough money to do all the projects that have been recommended. So to me, I'm trying to find a way to say, is there a way we can still get this done for all those user groups? I don't think you need 50 grand for horses. Maybe the walkers need 50 grand to decide where they're going to walk. The skiers, but I'm guessing we all feel about the same. you get the user groups out there to say whether they like it or not. And to me, we're not talking about construction, we're just talking about a study. And this doesn't require a master plan, this doesn't require DNR approval, right? This is just county owned land, we own it. Hey, can I ride my horse around this building? We don't need a study. I would cut 100,000 out of those three budgets and put 50 grand in. Because I don't even think you'd spend 50 grand doing that. But
Can I make a suggestion? We could do that, put out RFP for someone to do a feasibility study for those three user groups. I want this, that is, and they're all silent sport, by the way. So you're looking at equestrian, hiking, cross-country skiing. Or we can make that planning project a green project, where it's a construction project, where we would set aside 50 grand, create and build the trail.
now, if you said you're gonna study it and build it for 150, I'd say you got a good budget.
No, it's either or. Either study it or combine the three user groups into one study. Or
I think you should.
set aside 50 grand for each user group to build the trail and the trail amenities. in the
And not
county
study it.
forest. We would do the
Study. I like that idea.
So it's a different approach. So what you're doing is you're flipping it from a planning project to a
To a
construction.
construction project. Yeah, I like that way better, to be honest. Then you're getting something, because the public's gonna say another study, another study. I'd like to say, hey, we're gonna build. But I think these could be the same parking lots. I mean, this is where I would say, why would we build separate parking lots for each user group? Just like we were up at the Governor Knowles, you had equestrian and you had four-wheelers together. No reason that this particular project shouldn't involve all those user groups that you have up there. The silent sport user groups, that you would try to identify that. Let's start off slow. Let's make sure we're all gonna use the trail and find a spot where all three of us agree to use the trail.
All right, that's what a feasibility study would provide us with that data.
Yeah,
But if we want us to gather that data, we can. We could plan the trail. We would collect public input, but we need the resources to build the trail and provide the amenities.
yeah, I get that. Yeah, I'm fine with the budget as long as it's building. I'd go along with that recommendation.
I'm trying to track so I can give you guys totals on how much is gonna go beyond the, so you're leaving, what are we
Leaving
funding?
the budget, we're just changing the scope of work.
Okay, leaving the budget,
Yeah, we're eliminating E3,
eliminating E3,
so that was 250.
but the budget's staying the same.
Budget goes down.
That goes down.
Three's gone.
Feasibility studies on the county forest for both,
That-
for equestrian.
That language is gonna change to say,
Costs stay the same, but rather than a planning project, it's a construction.
right, with that, I think that's a good way to do it. If you're gonna do a construction project, you're gonna plan it anyways. Construction project.
Not at all, Mike. Tim, I don't know if this is in order, but E4 under equestrian, that is another feasibility study. Examine how to open the Gandy Dance Trail to equestrian. I would prefer that there not be equestrian use on the Gandy Dance Trail with how to it. I think it also should be weather, but anyway, I would speak for deleting that from the list.
Yeah, well,
And that's a controversy.
it is, and that's why we said do a study, don't just open it. because there was people that just wanted it open. So the compromise was, let's do a study on this to prove to the public whether it'll work or not. We'll get to vote on whether we do it or not. But that was a controversial. Anything to do with sharing was controversial. Imagine that.
And I've said this before, I'll say it again, but I know in Minnesota DNR that they were adamant that equestrian use and bicycle and hiking use. Gateway Trail, they've got a parallel.
Judge Black just ruled it was fine. Stour Trail. There was an injunction to stop it because they said it was dangerous. Judge Black denied that. But now you can ride on the Stour Trail, so if it was dangerous, wouldn't allow it.
We have a proposal about the feasibility study to open the Gandy.
Yeah, I'm absolutely
Somebody said-
for it. The group has been adamant that these feasibility studies, they got a feasibility study for their UTVs on the Gandy. They wanted us to approve that, and we said, no, it's a feasibility study. So, yeah, that has to stay, as far as I'm concerned, for equestrian. That was and Alta would have said that today, the biggest, you guys didn't say it today, but Alta said over and over, the biggest trail issue we had in the county was everyone wanted to see the Gandy open up to multi-use. We heard that loud and clear once. But when it comes down to certain group sharing, that's where the controversy goes.
Just clarity, as we move E1 to a construction project to build trails on the county forest, that money added to E2, the construction project to develop equestrian system on county properties.
That should all be the same.
It's the same one, right?
I would think so.
It's the same thing, yeah.
You just eliminate the feasibility study that if you can go with the
You can just go with the construction.
construction for the 300 to.
So we're striking even.
Yeah. But the other two remain.
So that again helps with the budget, right? Next year, we can always add more money if we want to, if we don't have enough. We don't have enough projects for you guys to do.
Good one, Chris. Well, the other three general government supervisors, how do we feel about the Gandy answer?
I'd say yes.
I basically, I know we're reviewing this, but, I trust the work of the other.
I might come back to say none of that should be on it. Don't work.
Eliminated this one, three. And then disability study stuff got added into this for the equestrian. Parking lot. Stour. Very good with that? Hiking, connecting D Kennedy and Albrin. Adding restroom facilities along the game.
Question?
Yeah.
When we're talking about adding restroom facilities, I gather we're talking about more than porta potties
Talking about year round.
year round.
A
So,
lot of our bathroom facilities on these parks and trails are not year round.
so that involves heated
Yeah.
septic field,
Water,
water.
yeah, man, yeah. It's an expensive.
Yeah.
Okay. Thought it was important.
Every time you on those trails, you know, stay out of a place for them to go to the bathroom and get some water. Questions on this? Done? Quinn? Again, the feasibility study stage, sounds like, and enhancing the trailhead. Sacred.
And we're gonna change the feasibility to construction, right?
Issues or people both? Mom? Everybody cross country skiing, so we have impacting Algren and D.D. Kennedy, adding entities, county property there. Change this, the construction project. Another study, and then working on a plan between the county, Garfield, and Bible Camp. Unified recreation. Oh, have we decided how we're doing this project by project, or if we're saying 992,000 is getting signed?
What's the total come up to be?
As of about 2 weeks ago, it was 992 if we don't spend any more of the 200,000.
What's the total?
Well, that's what I'm trying to track if somebody.
Not Chad.
All right, so let me run through this list real quick with Bob, because I think he can tell me the best. All right, starting with S1, Bob. S1 and S2 are both approved, right? All right. A1 and A2 are both approved. All right. XC, XC4, XC5, XC5. I've got two XC5s. Those are all approved.
Yes, with XC5 in a construction. We'll make those changes.
Construction project.
I don't even see XC6 on my sheet.
But XC, one of the XC5s.
Yeah, I'll put the second XC5 as XC6.
All right. B9 and B3, both approved. H1 and H4, both approved.
Yes.
And then E2, E4, and E5.
E2, yeah, so we're removing 50 from E1 and 250 from E3.
You want to remove the full 250 because you got the range of 0 to 250 and the estimated cost at 750. So I only pulled 200. Make sure you had some padding since it was a wide range.
That's the question that Governor Knowles. Get rid of the whole thing.
Okay.
Okay.
E1 and E3 are gone, so you're really subtracting 300 from our total of 1.75.
You're talking about around $550,000 out of the fund balance, probably after we close out the year. Would be fund balance for next year.
So what if, so here's my question. Could I make a motion that, I don't know the timing, so we approve transferring the money from the designated fund to the budget. Then that balance of the projects, maybe we're not gonna get them approved again, quick enough. The balance of the projects would be used as the ARPA funds. Now, again, I'm jumping in front like I just criticized earlier. So I'm not doing it. I'm just talking. I'm just talking. Or it comes out of general fund. Now, I know we put money in the general fund. Maybe it's just better off to say general fund money, but to me, you know,
Perfect place for that.
I just think it should go on the list I want the board to approve it going on the list. So my motion would be either general fund or ARPA money for the balance.
All right, so the direction of the board is I update the
That'd be my
capital,
motion.
I update the capital plan with the 1.45 million. Fund it with the remainder of what's left from the sale of the lime quarry, and then the excess is coming out of fund balance for now.
And the estimated excess is what, about
550,000, and I know Mo's got a little more expense coming out, so it may be more like 570, 580. He's got a little more coming out this year.
But could we tee it up? I just want to tee it up as one of the ARPA projects. Because
Okay.
you're not gonna, I mean, I just wanted to get in the box when we do it. I'm not saying we're funding it now with ARPA money.
But I've got it listed on there,
Well, you already got it listed on the,
but I didn't put an amount. I just put P-tag project.
oh, okay. So the board still has an opportunity to vote on that someday.
Second that motion.
Chad, the project got taken off here. It come out to 1.45.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
right?
1.45.
1.45. We got 992, but he's got some more to come out. So I think safely to say conservatively should have 900,000 left at the end of the year of the line.
You're looking at 600.
It's a big deal. I tell you what, I'm very proud of everything that's gone on and being part of PTAG, and I think this is a big moment for our county. And
So when,
It's a win for the youth.
so it's not in the capital plan now, but what I will do between now and November is I will update the capital plan with that, and you guys will have final approval.
Now, did we clarify whether that's fund balance or ARPA?
I just wanted, right now, Chad's saying it's fund balance, but I just want the opportunity that Chad said it's in the box, so,
It could be fund balance or ARPA.
or ARPA, that if you guys want to use it for ARPA later, you can use ARPA if you get board approval. When we get done with the ARPA process. So I'm fine with just having it general, fund balance right now, then. That'd be the motion.
Motion and a second. Discussion.
Mike just left. Is that a quorum?
Ready to tell us something?
Should have
Well, I mean, but there's no more discussion. All those in favor? Aye. Aye, opposed? Carried.
Thanks, Tim. Hey, what Mr. Nelson said is correct. This has been a monumental task. Like what, year and a half? A year, 2 years, and getting closer here.
I think the fact that you pulled all those groups together and had that kind of a process is absolutely awesome. Very good work.
Good job, guys.
All right, what do we got left? Oh.
And ARPA.
Yeah. Annual budget amendment recommendation.
But he just did one.
Yeah, we really get to dig into stuff.
I've got 5 minutes.
Please, for all the work Chad and the directors put into it.
We should be able to trust you.
Okay, you should. Should I wait? Now that Mr. Nelson has left, let's
This
roll.
will go much faster. Just quick, get it done and everybody.
If you go to the bathroom, someone makes a motion to adjourn.
You're the ones you wish for.
Okay,
Got a full day's work yet to do today.
let me give you a general overview of the kind of the philosophy we put into this. Division directors were asked to come in with a flat budget, no increase. Typically, they might say plan on a 2 to 3% increase. We said flat. We knew that there are some things that we wanted to invest in and some additional spending. Also, the fact that I think that our general fund has gotten sufficient enough that we felt like we keep putting money back into the conservative in our approach. we budget to make sure we're not adding to things that we don't have to spend. The other thing I'll say is we looked at shifting resources to areas that needed special items or areas of the organization. For example, last year, we put some extra people and resources in environmental services because of all the work that they were being asked to do. Also, we did parks and trails, investment in resources there. This year, we're still going to be putting some extra resources in parks and trails because of the maintenance and equipment with all of the new facilities and activities and trails that we're taking over or responsible for. In addition to that, we will be filling the position actually got approved last year. But with the delay in our website and delay because of COVID, we have not yet hired an information officer. We feel with our new website coming on, with our project with the University of Wisconsin called University, where we are going to look at marketing and branding of Polk County, and with all of the information that we want to improve getting out to the public and also receive information. Now is the time to go ahead with that information. Finally, I'll just say this. From a philosophical standpoint, I think in the past, many times it's like, how are we going to hit budget this year? How are we going to keep our programs running? This year, I tried to take a look at some areas of more forward thinking. Areas that we left out for the last decade, maybe weren't given the attention they needed. This may be the year where we're trying to pick up on a few things. Bottom line, this budget does not exceed our levy. And the good news is every last year and not the year before, but 2 years before that, we had unused levy that we did not use and hence did not have to collect in taxes. We are able to go back and use those unused levy dollars. What that means is obviously you have to collect it in taxes. But we are not going to use any of the unused levy that we're eligible to use the previous year, at least not yet. That's our plan. Not going to put that burden on the taxpayer. Okay, you've got the booklet in front of you. The page 1 is the fiscal year 2022 budget tax levy calculation summary. Chad has it on there. It's kind of small. Let me just kind of hit the key points here. 2021 tax rate or tax millage rate was 4.27%. I remember that because could have the year before it was actually higher, and I was excited that we could bring down the millage rate last year. With the 2021 equalized value at 5.3 billion. This year, equalized value has gone up about a little over 10% to 5.9 million. And as a result, our millage rate is 3.843. So the rate per 100,000 has gone down again, which is good. You go down that column, you'll see how we come to the proposed levy or how it is calculated. Not the proposed, it is the levy. We start with 2021. We add personal property to it. And then we subtract our debt payment, which was at 2.45 million. And the new 2021 Polk County base was 19.97. Now, if you go down, you'll see how we calculate this year, the 2022 total allowable levy is 22.9 million. But as I had just mentioned, we're not going to use the unused levy, which we could or not. So actually, my proposal is the 22.638 million as the 2022 levy. Any questions on that? If not, the next pages in your budget summary, pages 2 to 7, is our, what do we call it, the columns report?
Yes, sir.
It's basically a summary of all the budgets by department. You can see it goes across the top for all the different departments. So you have revenues, expenditures, and at the bottom you have FTEs. I can tell you from a overall standpoint that our budget for the departments and divisions is what we're calling moderately flat. In some cases, they're down a little bit, some cases they're up. Sometimes some of the changes, we have some that are down because of shifting in responsibility or how we account for dollars. For example, IT expenses. Instead of charging IT expenses to a department, it now goes into the IT division. We are also taking savings in healthcare costs from the department out of their divisions because, the savings from the health insurance account that we have too much money drawing that. So there you can see in the summary for all these different departments. And by the way, this isn't the time when you have to say approve or disapprove. This is simply, I'm trying to roll this out to you now, getting it out a little earlier than we did last year, so that you can look at it. You can make amendments today. You can wait and make amendments Tuesday night, or you could wait and propose amendments on the day of the board meeting in November. So you can see the.
So Vince, questions, but do you really want us making amendments to the budget the day of the board meeting? Is that an issue for you?
It is an issue.
Yeah, I prefer that. I prefer that not happen.
That not to happen?
Yeah, that would be nice. Mathing is hard. So.
And that's why we have these meetings now and then next month.
I was just asking, I'm just having a sense that maybe Chad might not like that.
That would be nice.
Thing
to do it at the last.
Bringing that up. It does make it burdensome. It is also somewhat risky, when you think of all the work that's gone into this by all the division directors and chads and their staffs. And then all of a sudden, in the heat of a moment on a board meeting, the last night, somebody can start. It needs to be well thought out, and that's the key. You can see FTEs totals 411. That is, by the way, increase of 1.8 FTEs. Now, the last few years, we've decreased. Obviously, that seems to be the important thing, but that increase in the end is going into our IT area. The reason is we're adding a data analyst, which in effect, that data analyst was actually proposed out of the sheriff's department because they can use an analyst in their crime evaluations, those things. But we knew we didn't need that person over there full-time yet. IT can use a data analyst. Every division will use a data. So even on some of these surveys regarding PTAG, we have some specialists, or we hope to have that specialist who will be able to analyze that data and help us do our jobs better. So that's one. The other one is still in IT, it's for the 0.8, and that's a help desk person. Because of how we're upgrading our IT over these last couple of years, because it's fallen behind so far, we have greater demands in terms of service, mistakes, issues that are being resolved, security. So we do need to buff up the IT department a little bit. So that's where the growth is this year. Obviously, we've had some areas drop in headcount, other areas pick up slightly in some of these shifts. One other change of note, what is she? She's our treatment. What is she, Chad?
Treatment court case manager and the diversion case manager.
Yeah, she was, has been moved from the Department of Administration to Community Services, Lisa's area, behavioral health. We just transferred that person over. Again, it made more sense.
And then also the diversion case manager transferred from Department of Administration to the DA's office, CJCC practice.
Page 8, you'll see in here is the fee schedule, which you all approved last month, I believe it was. So that's simply, it's 8 through 37, 36, something like that. We can, I think, move past that. Then you have the capital, the recommended capital improvement plan beginning on page 37. The all the different things. And I know this is something sometimes you all like to go through. Projected, obviously 2022 is closed. It's in those column, that column for 2022, it's either been approved by me and it's in the budget, or it is being presented to you as an additional project at your discretion. So once we decide on those, then we will update this.
And just as a holding place, the 7.7 million for the facility update is in fund balance, but that's, I just had to have a place to put it until you guys determine how you want to fund that.
I got a question. If we're going through this, Vince, and we don't want to wait, so if you're gonna go through the capital, you're in the capital improvement, right, page? If I look at page 41, this would be under buildings, recycling, solid waste department. But buildings could be different than that, but I know last year we talked about this $45,000 plow truck.
Right.
So is that plow truck, what's that for?
Actually, that's a plow truck for the highway department. Remember, we talked about this last month, where the old one, which is, we're gonna shuttle it down to the cycling.
Okay,
So the one at the recycling department is dying. The one here is end of life, so to speak, but still functional.
sure.
So that's Mo's regular truck that he buys.
So what,
Facilities truck used by facilities in the wintertime and parks in the summertime.
How much capital improvement are you putting into the recycling center next year? Is that broke out in here? Specifically?
The recycling center items were,
They're on the additional funding request broken out by department. They're in here, but they're also on the additional funding request.
We'll get to that.
Yeah. it's in the-
I just want to look at that.
Right.
And the only other thing, if we're looking at capital, oh no, on capital, that's it. That was just my only question. What are we spending on capital improvements for the recycling center?
Yeah, obviously some of that's to be determined.
I understand. I was just wondering what you put in for it. How many dollars?
And so the next section, page 53, are those administrator additional fund. So again, the departments, divisions, were told to keep it flat, but then, that, knowing that they had special requests, things that are kind of beyond the normal. So you can see the different items in there. You've seen this before. I don't see anything on this page recycling.
It's on the board consideration.
Board consideration page.
On the next one, sure.
And which page is that? 54.
So facilities, purchase of gaylords to move bins within the recycling center, that's something minor, 10,000. You can see there, that's where we put the 1-ton plow truck, the government center area. Mo, is that the same truck? The 45,000 truck, that's the same one that I had on the capital improvement. Okay.
that's the facilities truck.
Oh, that's a different one.
That's the same one. That is
Yeah.
that's a facilities truck. That's used by facilities in the summer, or excuse me, winter, and trails in summer.
I think it was you, Fran, you or somebody pointed, maybe it was Mr. Pritchard pointed out the months ago about the overhead door and the header above it at the recycling center. Got nailed by a truck. Looks kind of shabby, but it's there. So we put on here, we wanted to.
So these aren't things that you wanted to put in the budget? You're telling us to make the decision?
These are options. I did not put it in my budget, but I thought there were areas of interest or it might cause some discussion. And so I said no, but let's go.
So you said no to these?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna ask this big haul truck for the recycling center, 95 grand. Is the current truck, can it make it another year or two before a year? Another year out of it, or are we gonna buy a truck and we don't know what we're still doing with recycling?
We looked at this as, two different options. We could lease a truck to get us through and cancel lease at any time. Or we could purchase a truck and whatever we do with the recycling center, trade it off or sell it with the recycling center. Or consume it in the highway as a lift truck and for other things. The current trucks down there now are getting, very high in mileage and not being able to get parts for them. Will it make it another year? It could.
Maintenance.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Polk County Administrator 2022 operating budget. Fiscal year 2022 budget administrator approved. Ended. Funding now. Just again, by way of example, the top has parks and trails. And it doesn't have a subtotal on parks and trails. Added up to about $80,000. That's the total capital
Is that the total? I don't think that's, I mean, that's,
I'm going up to.
right at the top of page 53.
Well, I know, but I got to go to their actual capital budget.
those are the additional requests that Lowe submitted to me.
What it says, administrator approved and recommended.
That means you could change it. I mean, I think if it's, I approve it, it's recommended to you like this budget, final approval.
That's why if there's another section where there's different capital.
So if you go back to 51 in your book, this is the capital plan for the parks, 5-year capital plan. So where you see levy, that's the amount that the administrator has approved to be spent in parks. 136,000. Now, some of that is like some stuff they already had going, projects that they already had going. There's 123,200 that's unfunded, that's for the board consideration.
That's got in a different.
No, I guess I don't.
I guess, well, I'm looking at 51 and 53 together.
Right.
How you read the two of them together, are we approving 2022? Will we be approving the 2020?
Yeah.
On page 51, will we or will we not be? Page 50.
Part of 53 is on page 51. Part of the approved on page 51 are like DNR projects that were already going that are in parks and trails. Anything on page 53 or 54 are additional funding requests above and beyond what is typically funded in that department. So just like with Mo's highway department, Mo has some, or the sheriff's office, we have vehicles that year to year to year are replaced. We have a replacement plan. That also goes into capital because it's technically a capital expenditure. But that's a recurrent item like the sheriff's office, I think, is $265,000 for squad cars each year.
If there's this additional funding request get as part of the budget unless there's a specific.
So the ones that the administrator has approved and recommended are built into this budget.
All these ones at the top.
Yes, they're already built into the budget.
They're in the budget.
Yeah,
So why are they here separately then?
because the administrator is trying to show you guys anything above what our baseline typical funding is. Any changes to our budget. So we use flat budgeting, any changes. And then page 54 are items for the board's consideration that are not in the budget that will have to be funded outside of the proposed budget.
This labeling is very confusing.
So if you want to, if you made an amendment and the board votes in November to remove the lawnmowers for parks out for $10,000, and the board approved that, we would remove that from my budget. I've approved it, but you could amend it.
So this 1,360,000 is in the budget.
Yes.
Yes.
Everything on this list you have in the budget. You put it in the budget.
Yes.
Okay. That's clear.
So
53 is in the budget and 54 is for reserve.
right, and anything that, if you all said right now, and then the board approved and said, we want to approve all of page 54 for 1.5 million, then what I would say is that would need to come from either our general fund, part of it could come from ARPA, part of it could come
So
from.
that was my question, Administrator. So you have, let's say, law enforcement, the microwave radio system, backup towers. They're saying they need that soon, right?
Yes.
Is that project also going to be put in the box of ARPA,
Yes,
or ARPA box?
right.
Right.
And it's one of those that, yep, I think it's important. Do we have to do it this year? And based on a lot of factors, I said, let's put that up to the board. They may decide to say that's an ARPA project. Or you can say, let's take it out of the general fund, or we could take it out of our asset protection fund, which we've been developing over the last several. So I'm glad you brought that one up. Certainly, that's one of interest, and we've got Don here if you want questions on that.
Like that. But 54 are not in the budget.
Right.
53 are in the budget,
Yes.
but they somehow or other they're.
No, they're not marginal. It's just not the standard operating expenses that a division or department have. It's things that come up.
You've already said as administrator, you're putting $1.4 million in additional funds in the budget.
Yes,
And you weren't comfortable to put another $1.5 million. You didn't want to come in and say, hey, I'm going to put $3 million.
right.
As additional funding. You're saying I'm going to do $1.5 million this year, and maybe this other $1.5 million next year.
I suppose I could have said, here's my budget, and not offered you guys anything.
Yeah, I get it.
I don't mean offer it like that, but rather I think, what I learned last year was that you all have direct contact to citizens, you have topics and so on. So I find that some of those that are marginal for me, it's up to you. It's not just my decision.
Again, going back to 53, parks and trails, there's two of those that are marked recurring, but they're capital items.
Right.
Is that recurring mean that we're going to build more trash cans every year or whatever?
Well, let's take the docks, for example. Replace wooden docks with aluminum. We won't do all of our docks this year. But the ones who are in disrepair, replace them, do that. But we have docks that next year we'll probably have to do the same thing.
Are they in a 23
Capital improvement
They're in
plan?
there now? Or?
Yeah, they should.
Page 51. It'll show 2022, 2023, and 2024 for dock replacement.
One.
And,
Oh, we didn't, oh, that we don't have.
and if it's recurring,
The old 2023.
if it's recurring, that means if it goes in the budget, then that becomes part of the baseline. And,
They'll just have that automatic next year. That 10 grand is going to be there.
Right, okay. Trash cans is in 7,000 a year, 5 years.
I have a question about the garage doors at the recycling center. So I don't know, I don't recall if we were told when this, but it just seems kind of curious to me. Has there been some type of insurance claim filed against either who wrecked it or on our own insurance?
Was it you, Mo?
Was it you, Bob?
I don't like that bumper, Paul.
Well, these doors have been hit for many, many years. Okay, several times by haulers and that. an example would be at the highway department, when our salt haulers come in, if they hit our door, we go after that trucker and they replace that door and fix it. This has not happened in the past at the recycling center. So my intent is to fix those headers. The next company that hits those doors, they replace the doors. So this has been a long-term thing of several hits and damages that have not been accounted for insurance.
Is it an aesthetic issue or is it a function issue right now?
Right now, it's aesthetic, and they're wore out on the headers, have been damaged enough that they need to be replaced. They got cracks in them, and they're repaired up there to be functional right now, but they need replacement.
But again, knowing where we're at with the county, would it hurt to delay it 1 year? With not knowing what we're doing with the recycling center? I'm just, is the roof leaking? Hey, you gotta fix it today.
It's not currently leaking. I would say though, if things became damaged, I'd come back to you for a request to repair them for the cost. It became non-functional.
Right now, they're still working fine. It just looks bad.
Correct. They are going up and down.
I don't know for
Page 7, summary of revenues and expenditures. Sales taxes.
Well, that is other taxes.
Where we at?
Page 7. Sales tax last year, we did, or I'm sorry, last year. This year we'll do probably right around 4 million.
Where is it? Where is it on this revenue summary?
That be state aids, Chad?
Oh, page 7.
Finance.
Oh,
On this job takes.
Yep.
When you got your interview done. Is that working for you?
Wonderful.
yeah, state aids.
State aids, so it's, this is sales tax 15 million.
No, that's not the only state aid. It just gets put in there.
I think would be useful because we made a big deal about the sales tax being up, whatever. Useful to have. See what other state aids.
I do gotta go home today. Tonight, I gotta go home.
Okay. You guys are doing great. And I'll just say this, the next section is a breakout by division or department. You can take a look at that. I will highlight, and you'll see in general, the expenses that we're spending in each is relatively flat, give or take a little. Some are up, some are down. What's interesting about this, we've added in there, not just revenues and expenses, and FTEs, but in many cases, we have key programs that are being implemented as well as key metrics, key things that we're monitoring, to see if we're fulfilling our job. We think in the long run, as we get better at this, that will enable us to push back, so to speak, when they say, hey, I need more money for this, this, and this. We can say, how have you done in hitting your key measurements?
And keep in mind in administration, last year, the 5.9 million for the building hits in the Department of Administration. This year, the 7.7 million hits in there. Shows, so that's just difference there. General.
So I want to jump ahead of where you're at, Vince, but if we jump up to page 77, outside agencies, I do have one amendment. I'd rather make it today. It's controversial. People have a chance to comment on it. So one of the things I just verified too today, and this is a little bit of what's happened with tourism over the last year with them not getting their webpage up what they promised. They're not following their MOU. So they haven't got their webpage done. And they haven't got their board of directors in place for their MOU. So I did talk to economic development here a month ago. And I suggested I was going to propose this. I just wanted to make sure he didn't have a problem with this. Is I would like to, my amendment would be to, I still want to fund $70,000 for tourism. But what I want to do is give 10,000 of the dollars dedicated to tourism to economic development and leave 60,000 with the current tourism budget. And earmark it as, because I want to see, what I want to see is the accountability. Right now, the tourism board, their MOU, they're not fulfilling it to, I think, the level of expectations. And what I'd like to do is still send the message that the county's supporting tourism, but I'd like to earmark 10,000 economic development and actually them next year report back. He's thought of a couple really good things they could do with the money, and it would specifically target tourism. So I'd like to make that amendment today. It's an amendment I make. I guess I need a second on it. Because this we don't do by consensus. It requires an amendment and a vote, right?
Yeah, and then we would take it to the board, vote like any other
At the
resolution, and
last,
say this has been promoted.
when would that go? Because I know we used to make amendments to the budget. What's the
So
process?
what we'll
right
do is each committee gets it, they can make their amendments, and then all those amendments come back to you guys on the 9th. Recommendation one way or the other, or no recommendation, then it goes to the board the night of the 9th to adjust the administrator's proposed budget.
Was it proper to do that amendment today?
Yeah, it's proper anytime between now and the 9th, so the earlier you can do it, the better.
This wouldn't affect the total budget.
No, it doesn't
It would
affect the
just
budget.
reallocate for tourism.
Yeah, it still spends 70,000 on tourism, but I think it does two things. I think it's time for us to allow someone else. You know, if you look at the structures of those two boards, if you look at economic development, you look at who's on those board of directors. You've got some pretty strong leadership in Polk County working on economic development stuff, and you got and tourism, which is good. I mean, that's what they do, but you know, they got money to do their website. They haven't done it. They told us here 4 months ago it was going to be done the next week. It still isn't done as of this morning. They haven't met the MOU requirements on their board of directors. And I don't know what else. And then the president of the tourism undermined us this year by trying to go to the DNR and actually get them to repeal the MOU with us on the Stour. You know, I'll use the word, it's a little bit dysfunctional right now. It's needed. I know it's needed, tourism dollars. I just think it sends a message to them to get your act together and yet give the county taxpayers, maybe it gives us another opportunity to see what someone else does with like 10 grand. 10 grand isn't going to sink their ship. But it gives the county taxpayers an opportunity to see what another agencies, and a lot of counties around here run tourism through economic development. Barron County does it. There's a number of counties that actually runs tourism through their economic development department. So I think it's the start, something, whether it's a good thing or not, at least for 1 year. I like the ideas the director said he would do and how he would target the money. And I think we would see some, you know, next year when we get our presentations, I anticipate seeing quite a bang for our buck for the 10. And it'd be interesting to see how our tourism now does it. So that's why I'm doing it. And that's my, so probably if there's any more discussion, this would be a second.
Hold on. Is that your motion?
My motion is to, on this sheet on page 77, is to change the tourism budget to 60 and give $10,000 to the economic at 45, but to earmark the 10,000 for tourism dollars.
Change economic
Development to 55.
from what? It's 60 now. Oh, no, that's.
Oh, I'm looking at 18. I'm sorry.
Yeah, 22 is 60.
So I'm looking at 22 budget. It's 60 now, so taking 70 and turn it to 60 and taking economic development to 70. But the 10,000 is earmarked. That's the caveat. I don't want to just give economic development 10 grand. I want them to use it for tourism.
Is there a second to that lengthy motion?
Okay, I just tried to cut it down for you, Ross.
You did. I'll second it just for the sake of continuing. this.
Sure.
All right, now is there any more discussion on the motion?
Do we have any idea what that?
I know we gave them 5 grand this last year to do a website and they haven't done it. So
What's their total budget's like 100?
Sure, I'm not sure off the top of my head.
I don't know what it would do to their budget. I don't know what their ending budget was. They didn't really give us a good snapshot of it. I just don't know.
So for the MOU though, that isn't until December 1st.
Well, they got it, the way it was worded, it didn't give a, here's the drop dead date. It was the 2021 MOU. They got it in January, which basically
I kind of recalled we had talked about a date.
I don't think there was a deadline date that said, but yeah, one could say, well, it's not 2022 yet. On the other hand,
Probably here by November 9th, probably.
Well, I'm guessing if this passes, you know, and I have no problem if they come in and say, hey, you know, this is an issue or something. That's why I didn't want to spring it on the night of the budget. I want to give them an opportunity to, you know, I'm so disappointed in tourism and the way it's being run. I mean, it is, out of all the outside agencies we fund, it's clearly one of the worst as far as what we get back, in my opinion.
I will say when we evaluated the outside aid came in, we thought the museum, we thought EDC had a very strong presentation of what they've done with the money and how they're going to use it. EDC's website, I think, is excellent.
Yeah.
They actually, it's almost like a tourism.
And, you know, part of this goes back to too, is the, you know, I looked at the administrator didn't fund, you didn't fund what we thought would be funded for the historic, or the museum either, right?
No,
You took some out of that.
they doubled what they were getting. I cut that in half.
Right. So, and I didn't go lobby the administrator on this. I didn't do any of this. I wanted to do it right here, you know. He used his judgment on that. I guess I could have said, hey, administrator, why don't you? But I just thought I'd do it here in general government. And, you know, if, again, I'd be open to, if it's just sending a message, economic development could probably do a lot with $1,000, with $5,000, but I guess I start off at 10. And if it 10 don't fly through this committee, I'll probably make a recommendation. Again, I will bring this up at county board, but I just want to float it through general government to see if there's any interest in giving another agency the opportunity to do some tourism private. Yeah, to kind of see if we can get that tourism dollars spent in a different way than the book or the gift shop.
Almost like, I could be wrong. What I'm hearing, it's almost like they sell William Johnson things. Oh, the website's an issue.
The board is an issue.
And their whole board is an issue.
Well,
They
they're
were required to diversify their board to include other interests in the county.
user groups.
And they feel like they have done that. It's what I've heard from them.
I talked to Joe Demling, who's our supervisor, and they haven't done nothing yet.
So we're saying then they're, under the terms of the MOU, then they're out of time.
Well, they're just,
I don't think you can say that.
I don't
yet,
think
because
I can
it's
say
not
that
the
yet
end of
because it's not the end of the year. But I would have thought, you know, if you got a deadline, you would kind of want to be, especially by budget. Joe told me, I've been telling him, you better get this website done because the county gave you the money and you haven't done nothing. you know, and Joe's been warning them, hey, you guys gotta get your stuff together here. And, so, and I know they reached out to one specific UTV person to be on the board, and they said they weren't interested in it. But I've heard they have not filled that obligation, but
Well, I mean, I understand, I know that there's some counties that combine tourists. But I'm not, I view them as two distinctly separate areas of expertise. I don't view them as being lumped together. And other counties may do this, that doesn't mean they're doing it well. But I don't know what counties are doing it, what aren't, but I think Polk County, when it comes to tourism, is in somewhat of a unique situation over many others.
All right, we're gonna call the question. Motion is to take 10,000 out of tourism and move it into economic development. Favor?
Aye.
Any other changes anybody wants? Right?
Just a question on kinship on that same page 77. I just find we get a report on how that's being held, and then I see in the 2018 actual, 2019 actual. Part of our budget and.
Yeah, it actually came through, community services. They got the same amount.
How did we resolve the problem?
Going to treat them as an outside agency, report to us once a year, like the other outside agencies from this committee.
they have an MOU to them.
They'll have an MOU.
They'll come to general government now.
Yes.
There's a couple other accounting principle changes that whenever I'm just gonna make you guys aware of that we changed and how you want me to cover those?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Go
Okay.
ahead.
When you look at fair and museum, something we have done in the past, and as I talk to other counties trying to assess what they fund their fair society and how they do it and all, is we were doing, like when Mo would fix a roof or put the new roof on or something, we put that in the fair budget. The costs for facility repairs are within the facilities budget now. So if you look at your additional funding request, you're gonna see the cost for the bathrooms at the museum and something else at the museum. And you're gonna see painting and roofing at the fair. The fair is still getting that, the museum's still getting that, but we're putting that in facilities budget where it's better housed. So this is like either, we just want a blank check, or you're paying for part of our director or whatever when you look at their funding. If it's facilities related, upkeep of facilities, it resides in the facilities budget. Just because it gives us a better picture of what's going on with facilities. In IT, we had a fundamental change this year. Working with, it's something, it's a question that came up from the committee last year. It was a valid question. How do we know how much we're spending on IT, or where can I see that? There really was no real clear way to do it because each department had their maintenance costs in the department. So now everything's housed in IT and it is costed back to the department through an intergovernment revenue. But you look at IT and you see the true cost of IT for the county. It's a cost allocation system. So each department's still paying IT, but the cost of IT is housed in IT. It shows in IT. And then if you look at the departments pay what's called an intergovernment charge to IT. That's their share of that IT cost. And then what other piece? Oh, the other thing that I thought was important to note on page 7 on your columns report, because it looks like an anomaly, where you see this excess of $2 million of revenue over expenditures. That is the dam money. So we're estimating that the $2 million from the state and the $600,000 from the escrow come in 2022, but only a little bit of expense goes out. So it shows a surplus because that fund flows in. So it looks like there's an excess, but that's because the dam money is sitting there because we anticipate those costs will actually be in 2020. I just want to make sure you guys are aware of that because they look enough. So if you go to number 7, page 7, where you go to net revenue and expenditures, you show a net revenue of 2 million. It's not like the county's making $2 million. It's because the damn fund, because we set up a special fund, has more money coming in this year than it has going out. So,
That's assuming we get the money from it.
that's assuming the money from the state and the money from the escrow. So, and there's always assumptions in budgets, just like the 7.7 million is built in. It's assumed.
Okay, so you've got a general overview here. I know you'll, before you leave here, you'll want to read through every page.
I'll do it at home.
I thought.
So at county board, how are we gonna, if anyone wants to change or make additional amendments, you're gonna have an opportunity at this county board that folks could make some additional amendments, right?
Yes, in fact, will we, Leah, Nelson's proposed amendment, we vote on it tonight or next Tuesday?
Depends upon whether you mean vote on it in order for it to be the proposed budget that's published that you then have the public hearing on. Or is it going to be an amendment that happens on the November meeting where you're actually changing? So one is still not the final, because you can't have a final budget number in any of these lines until November. So the only thing would be changing.
I took it as we're proposing it to Vince to do the change, and then the board is gonna get to decide
Yay or nay on that.
yay or
change.
nay on that change.
Yeah, so then I think that's probably the cleanest way. So you'd have the initial budget that's kind of been formulated, and all of the amendments that come from the committees, they'll be listed, and then you can vote on them
Yeah.
one by one.
And so between now and November, I'll take notes of all the amendments put forward by all the committees. And then there'll be a 1-pager that'll come back to general government for a recommendation, then go to the board on the night of the 9th. You want to add this to the administrator, change the administrator's budget in this way. And we'll have all the funding figured out at that time. So like I took the 2 notes from today, whatever comes out of other committees. Put it all
You're
together.
gonna make the changes from the trail stuff today. Is that what you're
That's
meaning?
what-
Right.
That's a summary of the budget.
What's on our agenda, Ross?
Perfect.
Can we,
Resolution 5521 calling for public hearing on.
We just have to, now that you've seen the proposed budget, we have to have a public hearing right before the meeting on the 9th. That's the resolution
Calling for the hearing.
calling for the hearing.
we're gonna do the, Russ, are we doing a meeting the night of the county board meeting?
Public hearing?
Public hearing?
Yeah. Yes.
Maybe for the full board.
Yeah.
For the full board, not just general government.
No.
Motion in order to approve that.
Yeah.
Public hearing.
Yep.
Move we approve resolution.
Any discussion on it? All those in favor? Discussion regarding the ARPA fund project.
Chad, if you could put that slide up, I'll make this real quick. You guys can drag it out or talk about it as much as you want.
Make sure I have.
We discussed this at the last board meeting, divvying up the projects that I've received for the people sent to me. In the 4 categories, actually 5 categories. In fact, I got a copy. Infrastructure was one. You can see what they are. And this is a living document. I got a request or information the other day, yesterday, came in. You can see those the front four categories, and then on the back, because there's an interest in supporting local initiatives to kind of separate those out. It's a different animal because you guys know it will help one individual community and maybe not another. All of you will be pitted against one another in one theory. So, but there are some worthy projects. Well, they're all worthy. So you will see different things. You might see the recycling center. We just marked it. We could get a number there. We ballparked 1.5. Now, I will tell you, could be a little more, could be a little, but we just try to ballpark this. Fairgrounds, we have nothing because quite frankly, we don't know exactly what the board will want to do with the fairgrounds. So that's really be anywhere. Put on there the $7.7 million mechanical update for this building. So you can see the types of projects. I won't go into every one. Broadband expansion. Like I said, when I get this study back in another few weeks, I think we're going to say we'll be able to tell where we have a true issue, and then we can start formulating ideas to say, here's our best opportunity to impact the most people. How can we make it happen? Parks and trails, you see it, we have P-TAG. Playground equipment, that's one of your optional, so many of these things are optional for you to decide if you want to include these in the budget or not, or they could be here. Environment and water quality, important an issue probably, or actually, and Bob has his staff has submitted several categories. We've also had a lot of, several different lake districts contact me about either alum treatments, cleaning stations, or those things. So the thought being, maybe we just set up one fund and we offer grants. That way you're not just helping somebody who needs something done this year, because in 2 years, another lake might need it. We won't have this money available. That's just an idea there. Health and safety, you'll see these different things. And then the local projects. What I would ask, and what I asked HHS yesterday, consider these. We don't want to do a deep dive into every project if we really don't think they have a good chance of being included here. But if you or this committee gets together and wants to discuss maybe next month, which of these projects do we think are important to us as a general government committee? And staff can begin, if we haven't already, doing a little bit of a more deep dive as to what it will actually cost, what are some various options or programs related. That's all I would say. This is our first step of organizing them. And like I said, I'm still getting suggestions sent in to me as we speak. Questions?
Great job.
Same thing we got yesterday.
Yeah, oh, yeah, I did add one or two. The broadband expansion, one that I had omitted.
Don't have price.
Yeah, I don't know what it is yet. Okay, that's all I have.
All right. Review and update our 2021 work plan. Anything for it? Okay, about subject matters for our next regular meeting.
Regular meetings, what?
So there, November 4th.
November 4th is the first Thursday.
Right, because the county board is early.
What time is that November 4th meeting going to be at?
Yeah.
We're going to come here at 10 and then we're going to come back here at 5?
No, the board meeting is the 9th, so if you have a GG on the 4th, we won't need one on the 9th.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So we're going to, I see, you don't want to have that meeting same night as the board meeting.
And this year, we do have to do public hearing for the budget, but we also have to do a public hearing for the redistricting plan, the second public hearing. So Those start at 5:30 and 5:45 respectively. So if all the amendments are in prior to November 4th, the committees make their amendments, I don't really see a need for a special GG on the 9th. I guess unless something pops up, that would be the only thing.
November 4th is an important meeting to be at. So that's just our normal start time.
Well, you want to start something different than 10 a.m.
General governments, okay, so general government will go at 10 on that date.
Adjourn's always in order.
I'll second that.